Alright, welcome and hello. Today we're going to be going over the rosters of both Greenskins and Norsca. You might notice that we have the recordings of replays in that as older videos, but the original first session where we went through the rosters was never recorded, or at least I think the recording was corrupted. So going to be remedying that by redoing it today. It's been quite a while, so it should be still quite fresh in my mind, but we'll see how things go. Starting off with the more popular one, so that we can rant about Norsca later. It's Greenskins. Starting with, of course, the Lord, the Night Goblin War Boss. The cheapest option for the Greenskin Lords, actually it's not really, because I think if you cut everything off of him, you can get down to 550. 550 gold is quite cheap, but if you want to go for the cheapest Lord option, you go with the Night Goblin Great Shaman, and then you go ahead and take everything off of him for 450. So although it looks like Night Goblin War Boss is the cheapest, it's actually the Great Shaman that's cheapest. Now Night Goblin, he is basically he's meant to be more of an anti-infantry focused lord. He isn't specialised at taking out large at all. He can be quite a small target, which can be quite good to get into like larger entities because they have a problem hitting him in masses of infantry. But his main focus is his anti-infantryness with his squig mount and also with the boss's loons, which is of course the Night Goblin Fanatic ability, where you can throw out some spinning loonies in a certain direction, throw that down the pipe of an infantry unit, and you can usually get it down to at least half health. He also comes with fermented fungi, which is a very powerful ability, also given to Skarsnak. It reduces melee defense by 24 and causes the unit to go into rampage. Now it should be noted it gives it rampage. It doesn't cause it to go into rampage, I'll correct myself there. It gives it rampage, which means that the unit needs to take a certain amount of damage before it will actually go into rampage. A lot of people make the mistake of putting this on a 100% health unit and expecting it to go into rampage. I think a unit needs to be at 75% health at least before it will go into rampage. So ideally you're using this on a unit that's already beneath 75% health. That way you can get the full advantage out of the ability. Really helpful ability, because Greenskins can sometimes have troubles catching things, especially like big single entities. So this helps in the fact that you can just send them into rampage and force them to fight you, which is of course what Greenskins want to do the most. Anything else special about this boy? You of course get back here, which is the Greenskin leadership buff, quite needed in the Greenskin roster because a lot of it is lacking in the leadership department. So often you will see your lord or hero with get back here. Items wise, he comes with Tormentor Sword, which is another good way that Greenskins can keep things in place. This guy really specialises in locking down stuff, although his killing power on his own isn't that great, which is why it doesn't pair well. Ideally you want to pair him with something else. Of course here we can see the Tormentor Sword is basically a net. It reduces melee attack as well, and it nets everything around him for 9 seconds, which is quite a short lasting net. Net of Amatok I think is like 12 as a regular cast. So it's not going to hold them in place for too long, but it should hold them in place long enough that you can use this, do some damage, and then send them into rampage to keep them into combat for an extra 17 seconds. But of course it doesn't pair too well with him, as he isn't the greatest damage dealer on his own. So ideally you want to pair him with something else that can run around with him and do the damage while he uses all of his unique abilities. So yeah, very much a utility lord, but as you can see here, when you get everything onto him, he gets up to 1,500 gold, which is quite expensive, and frankly there are better options for lower prices in the Greenskin roster, although he is quite a unique choice in the regards that he has the loonies, he has the fungi, and he also has Tormentor Sword. All very good utility items, mainly focused at tying down a important target or just clearing up infantry with his spinny loons. Next, looking at the Orc War Boss, he is the most generic ever. He's been in since the start of the game, I think. I'm pretty sure he has. I'm pretty sure this is one of the oldest generic lords, although he has recently had a bit of a change with the Greenskin update. He has Smash 'em Faster, which actually, first of all, going over mount options, he does actually get a Wyvern mount, similar to Azak, making him and Azak the only units in the Greenskin rosters capable of flying, if you don't count Doom Divers, that is. So he does have that uniqueness in the fact that you can actually put him on a flying mount. Now Greenskins don't typically want to put things on flying mounts because they only have the 2 options, so they aren't usually going to get air superiority very often. But if you're up against a faction that isn't going to beat your flying lord in any circumstance, then you should be fine. Just don't take a flying lord against like Vampire Counts or Bretonia, because he's just going to be up there all alone and it's not going to go well for him. Of course, when you put him on the Wyvern, his stats do drop down quite a bit, like by 13 and 14 respectively. I think probably his best option would still be the War Boar, because that's when he gets the best out of his stats in terms of damage. There's not a huge change with the Wyvern in terms of stats, and in terms of improvements, I mean, apart from the speed and a slight increase to health. He does of course always cause terror as well with the Wyvern, which is a handy thing to have. As for what the War Boss is, he is a more focused, a less focused even, a more generic lord than the Night Goblin War Boss. Whereas the Night Goblin War Boss is very specialised in dealing with infantry. The War Boss himself doesn't have anything usually unique about him. He can fight everything fairly reliably, and he just has a simple buff. In place of Get Back here, he has this, Smash him Faster, which as well as giving 16 leadership, also provides 24 melee attack to all allies in range, which is quite a powerful ability, especially if you're running quite a tight formation greenskin build. Giving 1 or 2 units, including himself, 24 melee attack is definitely no joke. But again, his stuff is fairly generic. Opal Amulet, Potion of Strength is there to boost his own attack, so he could be more of a focused to duelist, to taking out single entities, that sort of thing. But in reality, he's just very generic. Not really any specialties, not really anything too unique you can do with him. If you're not sure what, if your army is very generic and you can't really think of a lord to slot in to a specific place, you can always just take a generic War Boss. Next up, we have the Goblin Great Shaman. A nice cheap lord option, but for good reason. Of course, he does have absolutely abysmal stats, as he is a goblin and he is a wizard. Those two combinations do not make him the most powerful in melee. If anything gets near him, he's going to die. So for that reason, you really need to put him on a mount. We've been through this before as to why you need to put things on mount. Watch the army building guide if you go through that, but of course you need to give him that extra. That's an extra 59 speed for 200 gold. That will easily save his life. At 92 speed, very little will be able to catch him. If you bring in the Great Shaman, either put him on the Great Giant Wolf, or his most recent new mount, the Arachnarok Spider, with the Catchweb Shrine, Spider Shrine, is also a very capable mount. Of course, there you're trading off the speed for a much beefier and actually decent in melee unit, almost doubling, no, more than doubling his health, and a huge increase to actually every stat. Should be noted that the Arachnarok Spider on his shrine, comparing it with a basic Arachnarok, you do help the fact that he has Encourage, so technically speaking the leadership's higher. He also has his missile resistance, but in terms of stats, well actually no, they corrected it. It used to be that the Goblin Great Shaman on the Spiderweb Shrine had worse stats, but for some reason, although those bars are different, the stats are completely the same, which basically just makes it a cheaper Arachnarok Spider. The only downside is that you are putting your lord on it, so he's a target. But for 300 less gold, you can put your normally very squishy lord on a powerful Arachnarok Spider. So quite good there. He comes with, of course, the sneaky stealing Arcane Conduit, which is nice for magic generation, and his unique ability, don't even try it, is a direct damage spell that causes ability recharge for 15 seconds. He has 2 charges of this, and it's fairly decent. If you're targeting onto a caster or something with a group of abilities, let's say the enemy lord, this can definitely be quite helpful. I think it does around the park of about 600 damage, I think, to a single entity. So for 2 of those, you're getting 1,200 extra damage. Definitely worth it. It helps them a lot in fights that you normally wouldn't be able to win against solo lords or solo heroes, especially if you're throwing them on the shrine. Or if you're just putting him on a wolf, you can just be annoying and poke and prod at different units and cause them to have to recharge their abilities. Spell lore, of course, if you want to see the spell lore, go ahead and watch our video about that. Items wise, he has Crown of Command, which can be quite helpful indeed with the Greenskin roster, especially when you're dealing with things like trolls and Arachnarok Spiders, whose leadership are very bad and are really prone to running away. Crown of Command can cause them to have to fight until they die, basically. It does only last 30 seconds, but that is usually as long as it needs to last in most situations, which again, another quite handy little ability. It also comes with Scroll of Leeching, which is always nice if you just want to rob the enemy of some magic. So a very nice generic lord. His caster abilities are really good. You can have him just as a run around poke and prod sort of lord, where you sort of give his spells more of a supportive leaning utility based function, and you just have him running around with his giant wolf, or you can throw him on his spider, and then go for things like Curse of the Bad Moon, and his stealth spell will mean that things will blob up around him. You can use Curse of the Bad Moon and Itchy Nuisance to have their stats greatly reduced, and if you're trying to wrangle around with artillery, use Night Shroud and they won't be able to see him, which of course is very handy to have on a giant lord that is also a monstrous unit. And your caster. Being able to hide all of that in one, and it's already on the unit itself, can be quite handy indeed. So yeah, very versatile lord. A lot of two main different ways you can go, whether or not whichever mount option you choose depends on what you want from your lord. Of course, it does depend on how much you want to pay. If you want to go for a nice cheap lord, of course, just take the giant wolf. But if you're okay with going a bit more expensive in exchange for an Arachnarok spider, go that more big, crushing, supportive, AoE damaging sort of lord. Next, you have the best himself, except for he isn't the best. Never has been, unfortunately. Maybe back in Warhammer 1 he was, I don't recall too far, that was a long time ago. But unfortunately Grimgor has not seen the best of days. He is a foot lord who is very focused on dueling. Very much focused on dueling. He has a very powerful assassin ability, You're Next, which reduces the targeted lord or hero's melee attack by 24, melee defense by 40, and speed by nearly 50%, which is a very powerful, very powerful hex assassin ability. This basically cast this on any lord or hero, and it's unlikely Grimgor will lose to any of them. It's going to mean that he's basically guaranteed to hit, and it's going to make them less likely to hit. It also means that it's harder for them to get away with 50% reduced speed. However, even with 50% reduced speed, there are some mounted lords that could escape him, because that is Grimgor's problem. Although he's a duelist, typically you don't want your duelist to be a foot lord, because people can just run away from him and ignore him. And with 38 speed, that is very possible. His items help out in some regards. With his explosion armor, his blood-forged armor, he's able to sort of blow away enemy troops, so that he can just get through the infantry and get straight into the lord or hero that might be amongst them. And he also has Gitsnik, which again just increases his damage even further, and increases his melee attack. Which, when you pop in like You're Next, as well as Gitsnik, as well as War, as well as whatever melee attack magic you're giving, it's usually a bit of overkill with just how much melee attack and how little melee defense the enemy has. You're absolutely guaranteed to hit when it comes to getting with Grimgor. The only problem is Grimgor himself doesn't have the largest health pool because he's not mounted, and he also is a bit slow. Not what you usually want from your duelist lord. Something that's not got the most health, something that doesn't really regenerate, something that can't really even catch what he wants to be fighting, and something that has not that much missile resistance either. 15%. He is a fairly large model. Things can shoot him quite easily, and that is definitely a problem he faces with all of his different things. He's by no means too bad of a lord. It's just compared to the other greenskin lord options, he is probably one of the worst. He is probably only slightly better than the Goblin Great War Boss, and he is better than the Orc War Boss as well. But we'll talk about the next ones to begin going through now. But just last words on Grimgor is that he is not the best. It is sad to say, but he has seen better days. Maybe when they give him an Arachnarok spider mount, he'll be better. Now, onto someone that is fast, Grom the Punch. The differences between Grom the Punch and Grimgor are night and day. Grom the Punch is probably the best greenskin lord option these days. Even with his recent health, I think it was a health point reduction he got, he is still the most powerful. He had some changes to his abilities as well, I think, but nothing enough to change them from the fact that he is still the best. He is always on a chariot, can't take him off of it. It says he is anti-infantry, but don't be deceived by that. With his abilities, Language of the Boys, the Great on his Ear, as well as Axe of Grom and Lucky Banner, he can kill anything. His weapon strength and his melee attack can get up to such absurd degrees that he will kill basically anything. Doesn't matter if it's groups of infantry, if it's a lord, if it's a some cavalry even, he will do very well fighting all of it. But going through his abilities here, first of all, Language of the Boys. As long as he is in melee, he is applying a 16-second buff to all enemies in range, So that sort of like clicks over, so every time he's in melee he provides that buff, and if they move out of range they will have it for 15 seconds. It provides 5 melee defense, 4 leadership, most importantly, and immunity to psychology, which cannot be understated. That is a very powerful tool for the Greenskins to have. Again, they have leadership problems, and a lot of their units are not immune to psychology. Goblins, Orc Boys, Trolls, a lot of their most basic units have low leadership and are not immune to psychology. So if you pair this extra 4 leadership and immunity to psychology, it's a real powerhouse. Pairing Grom with, say, 2 units of Stone Trolls used to be one of the strongest forms of Greenskin play in the game, just because you eliminate all of the Stone Trolls' weaknesses, you increase their leadership, and you make them immune to psychology. And then you pair them with Grom the Punch, who can give them even more buffs, such as increased leadership, increased melee attack, and base weapon strength, as well as the leadership and melee defense. It means that this is quite an unstoppable force. Not to mention that all of this has regeneration, so if you just leave it alone long enough, it's just going to heal back up. And on top of that, Grom himself provides encourage for further leadership buffs. It's just a really, really difficult combination to deal with. And in terms of speed, Stone Trolls aren't even that much slower, only 30 speed less. 54 speed is very high for monstrous infantry. And Grom the Punch himself, of course, is very fast with his chariot ability and 84 speed. And of course, we've been through, these items are very powerful when placed on him. It does increase his cost can get quite extreme, especially for a non-caster lord. But these are really hard-hitting abilities. 24 melee attack and plus 40% damage resistance is really, really big. And the ability to sunder armor when he's not an AP lord naturally is really helpful. Another thing that makes Grom the Punch really stand out is that he's a chariot that attacks while he is moving. If you've seen some of the replays that he is featured in, or just if you've seen him in combat, you'll notice that he does an animation where he swings behind him. He is basically, to my knowledge, the only chariot that is capable of attacking behind it while he's still moving. Which is amazing for a chariot, because it means he can just run through infantry, not even give an attack order, and he'll still be swinging, and still be dealing all that damage that he has capable to him. And with that charge bonus, it makes him probably the most powerful chariot in the game, by quite a margin. So yeah, Grom, the best in my opinion. Next, someone that hasn't seen a lot of play recently, but definitely used to have a spot in the limelight, Skarsnak. He is a footlord, but unlike Grimgor, he is not so much focused to duelists as he is focused to just being in the middle of it and just not dying and giving amazing support utility. Get Back Here gives, of course, the 16 leadership. Curse Spite of the Bad Moon gives a 25% damage increase, as well as 16 bonus versus large. Of course, Greenskins don't have that many bonus versus large options, in terms of they don't have a basic spearman unit in their infantry. So giving all of your infantry, or all of your units in a given area, 16 bonus versus large can really help against some of those big scary large monsters that Greenskins can sometimes struggle with. On top of that, he has Fermented Fungi, 24, of course we talked about before, very useful against single entities. His stats wise, of course, he is a halberd infantry, which is very unique to the Greenskin roster. They don't even have a basic spear infantry, because goblins don't have anti-large. So the fact that he has a halberd, I don't know where he got that from. But he does use it very well with his armor piercing and bonus versus large, and quite a high melee defense as well for a Greenskin lord. He also has Vanguard deployment, and his shining ability, Tricksy Traps, gives a AoE stalk, unspotable, and 25% speed boost to all friendly units in range for 29 seconds. Very similar to the Night Goblin and Shaman spell of Night Shroud. If we compare it, 41 second duration here, and this has a 29 second duration. The trade-off is that this has infinite uses, and it doesn't use your Winds of Magic, and it gives a 25% speed boost. So, if you're not planning to bring a Night Goblin caster, but you are still worried about artillery and ranged units, Skarsnak can give anything important around him that AoE stalk and unspotable, so that you can get them safely to the front line and safely into combat. Very similar to the Coatl's ability, I think it has quite a much wider range than the Coatl, so you can usually fit in more units into that space. And of course, looking at Skarsnak here, you can see he's quite cheap for what he is. He, in terms of value, can compete quite equally with Grimgor, and he can even do pretty well compared to Grom the Punch in certain situations. And Just in terms of his abilities, you might want to drop this, you might not always need this, and so you can get him down to a really cheap cost. Especially for a lord with 75 leadership, really good melee stats, and decent charge bonus as well. And a helpful fungi ability. His item, it's not good, to my knowledge. It doesn't do much. It really doesn't do much. I wouldn't waste the 229 gold on this in any situation. It's just not that good, which is probably one of the points where Skarsnak's lacking, is he doesn't have that really powerful item that some of the other lords have. He really deserves like another one in my opinion. However, he doesn't. So this is basically what you usually see him as. Either or not you give him with this stalk, or if you give him the anti-large. This is about the price point you'll see him at, and that's quite a nice affordable legendary lord option. Next, onto our hybrid caster lords, we have Azak the Slaughter. He is a hybrid lord. Very high melee attack, but quite low melee defense. His stats don't really change all too much when you put him on Skullmuncher. You're trading off the some of the melee attack and melee defense, but you're getting the weapon strength and charge bonus, as well as an extra 1,000 health. Himself, as it is, he does tend to be a bit squishy because that melee defense is very low. He can dish out damage quite quickly. The only problem is he does take damage very quickly as well. On Skullmuncher he only has a 25% missile resistance, and he has no shield when he's on foot, so missiles can be quite a problem to him. It should also be noted that on Skullmuncher he has the same amount of health as Grimgor, so he doesn't really last that long. He is rather squishy, but he does dish out quite a fair amount of damage so long as he stays alive. In terms of abilities, he gives a constant 8+ leadership to all units in range, which is his trade-off for get back here. Instead of having a temporary, if we see here, instead of giving off a temporary, it's up there. Instead of giving off temporary 16 leadership, he gives a constant increase to 8 leadership, which is, no, it's half the effect, but it's constant, which is probably a lot better, because once that 16 leadership usually wears off, usually the unit's going to break if they're that low on leadership, but with this way they're constant. You can always tell that if that unit's going to break or not. You can't be heads or tails on whether or not it's not going to work or not. He has the Law of Death spellbook, which used to be unique to him, but now with the Giant River Troll Hag it can be brought in with a hero version, although he is the only lord that can cast it. There was no generic lord option for the Death caster. So if you didn't want to bring the Giant River Troll Hag, say you're afraid of fire damage or something like that, he is a viable option to bring it. His main specialty comes in the fact of his AoE buffs. He has 2 items, Azak's Ard Armor and Slagger Slashes. God, pronouncing these names is difficult, but we'll get through it, I'm sure. Of course, his weapon gives 10 melee attack and an extra 4 leadership constantly. Pair that with Get On With It, and that's a plus 12 leadership constantly around him in a 40-meter range. And he also has Azak's Ard Armor, which gives 30 armor and 24 melee defense. That is the temporary buff though, that is not constant. But you see here with all of these buffs, Azak's specialty comes with very tight formations. If you're playing like a greenskin box, it could be argued that he's about the same quality as Skarsnak in terms of area effect buffing, although he does come at a bit of a higher price. You of course get the Law of Death though. Actually, if you cut things down, he usually can get cheaper than Skarsnak, as well as the buffs that you can apply to an AoE like Soul Blight. You can apply that around him, or Aspect of the Dread Knight can be quite helpful as well. So when you're pairing all these things together, he does function very well in a tightly packed army. So whether or not that be a death squad of like Arachnarok spiders, or just a lot of really tightly packed infantry, his main specialty comes from the fact that he buffs everything around him in a 40-meter range with some really, really good buffs. And when you pair that with like War and other magic spells, you can see where the Greenskins get their really high leadership and melee attack from. Excuse me. He also comes with Foe Seeker, which if you're pairing that onto his Skullmuncher mount, can be quite helpful to increase his speed even much so, because some things can catch him with that 110 speed, like Pegasus and such, but usually you can safely get away if you're using that Foe Seeker ability. Okay, alright. Next and finally, well, last but certainly not least is Wurzag, the other hybrid. Well, he's not really a hybrid lord. When you put him, he has a boar mount that you can put him on, which does make him AP, and it gives him a really good charge bonus. But he is, for all intents and purposes, a wizard as opposed to a hybrid caster. You really shouldn't be throwing him into melee too often, but he does have the capabilities to do damage once you run out of magic. On top of that, he has various ways of increasing melee attack, because of course he has access to the Big War spellbook. His abilities are also quite helpful. He can give a constant plus 5% missile physical resistance to all allies in range. He causes a 100% chance of miscasts map-wide to enemies, which is really good. It basically means the enemy is guaranteed to miscast whenever they cast, which can be really helpful for whittling down the enemy caster, especially if it's a lord. He also comes with his own version of a net. Effigy of the Git is a direct damage spell which does a decent amount of damage. I think it's about 1,000 or 1,300 or so. And it also nets the opponent down for 13 seconds, which we talked about why nets are quite good with the Night Goblin War Boss. This just increases it has a really increased damage to it as well. So quite nice to pair with the Greenskin hitting force. Speaking of Greenskin hitting force, he also has the Bonewood Staff, probably one of the best items in the game, arguably. It basically means that whenever he casts, he gives the 12 melee attack and 20% damage bonus to all targets in range. Check out our video on the Big War to just show why that's so good. He also has Squiggly Beast, which is basically just a really good arcane conduit that's constant. It means that you can get quite a bit of magic out of him, especially when you compare that with the Power of the War, which improves the recharge rate whenever he casts as well. Very powerful caster. Decent in melee, nothing too special, but will beat other casters usually. I'd say probably one of the best. All the Greenskin Lord options are really good, apart from like the occasional one or two that aren't too good. But all of them have very good selections in terms of their spells, their items, their abilities, some good utility, good melee stats. Just all good all around, so not many places you can go wrong when it comes to the Greenskin leadership. Following on that, we're going to the heroes, starting with the Goblin Big Boss. He is the cheap, really cheap Assassin Lord, basically. He's missing quite a bit in the stats for an Assassin Lord, but when you compare him with his price, it makes sense. He has two options, the Wolf and the Spider. The Spider has reduced speed, but extra health, a bit of armor, charge bonus, and it gives him poison damage, as well as Strider. So that's what you're trading off there for that 150 gold. Whether or not you need it is up to you. In terms of abilities, his Assassin ability is quite simple. It's only 30 armor and minus 24 melee defense he reduces by, which usually isn't going to help him win any fights. It's just going to mean it's best used on a unit that's fighting something else, usually. If you use this on a Lord or Hero that's fighting one of your big single entity monsters, or it's fighting your Lord or something, this can be quite helpful. Best use of this guy is generally just to send him after the enemy caster. He doesn't have the AP usually to deal with anything armoured, so if you're expecting the enemy to bring like a hero, say Bretonia, that's a caster, so say if they bring the Fae or if they bring a life down, then you can just send the big boss after him on his wolf. He'll probably be able to catch it, especially when you hop slippery, and you'll probably be able to beat it. Well, yeah, he should be able to beat any generic caster there are out there. Even the Fae would probably be able to beat. Of course, his leadership is lacking, so don't get him into any serious fights because he'll probably just run away. Next up, the Black Orc Big Boss. He is a much beefier version. He's not quite an Assassin Lord, he fulfills a much generic role. He's basically the hero version of the Orc War Boss. But his uniqueness is in the fact that he has Rabble Rouse, which grants a constant immunity psychology to all allied units in a 40 meter radius. So we talked about with Grom the Punch why that's so good. The effect still holds up. He also has Get Back here as well as Encourage, so very much so. In terms of stats and that, he is very generic, but with where he really shines is improving the leadership and also improving some of the other stats of all nearby units. You can use him as a duelist-esque lord. He has always really been used just for his immunity psychology and his leadership buff, but if you give him Heroic Killing Blow as well as say Dragon Slayer's Fang, he can become a pretty decent duelist lord who can go toe to toe with some lords and most heroes as well, especially when he's on his boar because he gets AP. I'd recommend always putting him on his boar just because it's such an improvement to have AP and that extra speed and a bit of extra health as well. He also comes with the Brass Cleaver as an item that you can use, which increases an AoE of 10 melee attack. Which, again, pairing that with that constant AoE, immunity psychology, and leadership, it's basically what if you took the War Boss and merged them with Grom the Punch in a hero form. Very powerful hero if you're bringing a army that really needs that buff to leadership and that immunity psychology. And his price can vary quite a bit, up to 118 on his with everything. Next, not much to talk about here. It's the generic caster options. These two aren't too special. The Night Goblin Shaman, which has the Little War, can get Vanguard deployment. He can't get a mount option, unfortunately, which is why he isn't brought too much, but he does have Stalk by default, so you don't usually need that mount too much as long as they don't find you. He has Madcap Mushrooms, which have a chance of miscasting but reduce ability recharge by 30 seconds. He also has Wand of Jet, which does the opposite. It gives magic in return for causing all abilities to be on that 30-second recharge. Also has Scroll of Leeching. Very generic caster, isn't going to do much in melee. Just keep him hidden. Orc Shaman, very similar story. He's just a worse version of Wurzag. Put him on as War Boar most of the time for that speed and for that AP. Evasion, just generic caster thing. He has Big War as his spells. Skull Wand of Kaloth is quite an interesting item. It gives a really big increase to weapon damage and 24 melee attack for 24 seconds. It also imbues Discourage. I think this is the only way that Greenskins can get the Discourage ability. So if you're looking for ways to really drop enemy leadership down, this could be a way of doing it. It is quite an expensive item, but I mean, like, when your Shaman runs out of magic, there's no reason why you shouldn't just pop this and throw him into something that isn't, especially when it's late in the game, and you can cause it to rout with this -16 leadership, and then you can just chase him off with your caster. That could be very, very, very influential. Alright, that is it for the heroes and lords. Next, onto the bread and butter of the Greenskin army. It is the infantry. Goblins, your run-of-the-mill, cheap, expendable, poor leadership infantry. Although not that run-of-the-mill as well. Although, as a base-wise, they don't look too impressive. They look like very similar to men-at-arms and units like that. They do get a silver shield, which is pretty good, because their job is basically just to absorb damage at the end of the day. Quite a high health pool as well, for an infantry this cheap. 26 melee, 20 melee defense is definitely by no means bad for a unit this cheap. But the main strength that comes with goblins that you don't see on the unit card is, of course, when you pop War, or when you give it AoE buffs from Azag, or you give them a buff from Wurzag's Bonewood Staff. When Greenskins have a lot of options to melee attack buffs, and so goblins can often hit way above their weight because they will have 40 melee attack or so for most of the fight. Like, it says 20 melee attack, but if you bring enough melee attack buffs, they can usually average around 30 to 40, which is really good for an infantry this cheap. And it's why they tend to win out against other cheap infantry quite easily. Really good choice against those, like I said, things with cheap front lines, because they will win most of the time. So against Bretonia, Beastmen, even High Elves. I think High Elf Spearmen would still lose to Goblins most of the time, assuming you're keeping War up and you're using enough melee attacking buffs. Skaven as well works quite nicely because of that shield and the fact you want them to take as much damage as possible. So yeah, very run-of-the-mill generic Goblins, but they do have a hidden potential. Next up, Night Goblins. If we compare them stat-wise to Goblins, they are an improvement in most areas. Increased melee attack, weapon strength, charge bonus and speed, but reductions in other areas. So these Night Goblins are less of a focus on holding and more of a focus on attacking. They also have Stalk and Vanguard deployment, which isn't something you necessarily want in your chaffy front line, because you want the enemy to see them as soon as possible, and ideally you want them to be fired upon as soon as possible. You also don't want them to have a low melee defense, because you want them to die as slowly as possible, because that is their job at the end of the day. They are a very chaffy focused infantry. They also have less leadership than basic goblins, which means that they aren't going to stick around for even longer. So they're meant to be an expendable chaff infantry, but they don't fill the role as much. For some reason they're focused more on damage dealing. with their poison, their increased melee attack, their increased weapon strength, and their stalk and vanguard. I'd say one of the best focuses for this unit would be in either a vanguard build, or if you want to just deploy one of these units as sort of a flanking unit. Because of course they have stalk, you can deploy them behind the enemy and they won't even know what's hit them until it's too late. They will still obviously win against like archers and that, obviously especially with the melee attack buffs like War. But they, compared to regular goblins, they seem more of a downgrade than they do an upgrade in terms of cost. I mean, you can see where the cost is going. It's mostly going into that stalk and vanguard deployment as opposed to the stats itself. But in my opinion, regular goblins will usually do the job just as well. Next, onto some actual basic infantry, is the Orc Boys. If we compare them to goblins, you can see the Orc Boys have far greater stats all around the board, in fact, compared to leadership and less one melee defense. But the trade-off there is they're not expendable, so they will affect the rest of your army's leadership when they die, inevitably run, because even though they're your basic infantry, they still only have 50 leadership. So they are still going to run pretty quickly. But yeah, very basic infantry unit. Nothing too much to complain about. They'll beat most, if you've seen some of Zerk's videos, you'll know that the Orc Boys beat every other basic infantry of their sort of cost level, just because of the War and the melee attack bonuses we've talked about before. So yeah, pretty decent unit. Of course they have Silver Shield, they don't have Silver Shield, they have a Bronze Shield, so they are a bit more vulnerable to missiles, but that's what you have the Goblins there for. Speaking of Goblins, some nasty Skulkers. These are Night Goblins, in my opinion, done better. Whereas Night Goblins were always some weird in between expendable and damage dealer. Nasty Skulkers are very much focused on the damage dealing aspect. If you compare them to Goblins, you can see here their stats are really only improved in melee attack and charge bonus, which you might think that's a complete downgrade. Why is it 200 gold more? Its its HP is less, they don't have silver shields, they don't have armor, as much armor, they don't have as much leadership. Wait, that's not right. Oh yeah, they do have leadership. Yeah, they don't have as much leadership. They have nowhere near as much melee defense. So why do they cost this much? Well, the main thing is, again, they have their Stalk and Vanguard deployment, but their main focus is the fact that they have this high melee attack and they have armor piercing. The next armor piercing infantry for Greenskins is Blackhawks. So this is the cheapest armor piercing I think you can get. I think this is, yeah, it's tied with Squig Herds, but this is the cheapest armor piercing you can get as Greenskins. They also have Opportunistic Murderer, because of course they do, they're goblins, which is really good. If they are winning in combat, they gain an extra 12 melee attack, and their armor piercing weapon strength increases by 40%. And considering they're an armor piercing unit already, their damage is going to go up by about 30%. And increase that melee attack, plus that with War as well. If these get into a winning situation, they will really cleave through infantry way above their cost. I mean, if you think about it, if this triggers as well as War, their melee attack can get up into the 50s quite easily. Which, with that armor piercing that most other infantry lack, it means they can actually beat, or at least do really good damage to high tier infantry. It's one of the reasons why they're very good against dwarves. That sneakiness means they can't really be shot until it's too late. Because that is their main weakness, I think, is missiles. If a good missile volley gets into them, they'll probably just die and then run. So that's really why you need that Stalk and that Vanguard deployment. Try and deploy them into some sneaky positions, try and get them to flank the enemy so that they have that winning in melee combat, because usually when you flank the enemy, you're usually going to have that winning in melee combat modifier, especially if they're already engaged with another unit. And if you have that trigger, then you're just going to cleave through it even quicker. They also come with smoke bombs, which is a nice little ability they have as well, which can help. Which it can't help actually. It's more than help. It's quite an influential ability. So, like we talked about before, where Greenskins struggle to sort of keep hold of things. Things that enemy lords and heroes can usually just slip out of their grasp. This reduces all enemies' speed by 60% in an AoE around them for 61 seconds. Now, it is a quite short effect range of 30 meters, so you usually need to get this unit quite close to the thing you want to slow down. But it is very powerful to be able to reduce speed by this much on a unit, especially if it's a unit that you don't want to get away. You can usually guarantee something is going to die as long as you're using this ability on it. I will actually just go back and mention, because although we skipped over the River Troll Hag, she does also come with the Swamp Breath ability, Magic Missile, Explosion. Not too much to talk about there. has a tendency not to go off. Think of it like Throgs. Well, I'll mention it when we talk about Throg's vomit ability, or why it's not too great. But Mither is basically the same, except from this has a single target and a larger range, so you can use this from further away. It's quite a useful ability that all these greenskin options have, is the ability to make sure the enemy doesn't escape. Because greenskins are sort of lacking in the speed department, especially on their hard hitters. They can't usually finish the job too well. So units like this can definitely help out quite a bit. Not to mention that if a unit's chasing them, they don't want to be chasing them, say there's like some cavalry nearby, this can help them get away. Or it can help them get a good counter charge onto them. So yeah, don't underestimate just how helpful nets and speed reductions are, especially for a melee faction like greenskins. Okay, next, Night Goblin Fanatics. Nothing too special to talk about here. These are basically the exact same as Night Goblins, except for they come with the spinning loons, which is a quite nice powerful ability, although it has been nerfed recently in the fact that you can't use it if the hit points are less than 25%. For that reason, I think it's usually better to try and use this ability on like the Night Goblin War Boss, if you have to. Not to mention that there's a much better version of this unit that we'll talk about in a minute. Next, we have the ROR Night Goblins. These are ROR basic Night Goblins that have immunity psychology and armor sundering, which is a very nice pair. I'd say very, very good. They lose the expendable tag because of course they're not expendable anymore. These just fulfill the role. These aren't really a unit that you sort of just swap out with another. I suppose you could basically swap this out with an Orc Boy unit if you have 100 gold extra laying around, because they are just a really good upgrade. Like I said before, the greenskins don't have a lot of cheap armor piercing, so having armor sundering on such a cheap unit can really help that front line quite a bit. And of course, immunity psychology is quite a rarity in the greenskin roster, so having it on a basic infantry can come in handy more times than it won't. Moving on to some decent damage dealing basic infantry now, we have Savage Orcs. These guys are, comparing them to Orc Boys, they've traded their armor for a physical resistance of 25%, which overall I think is better, but they do have a reduced melee defense, which means they end up taking more damage most of the time. Their main increase comes into the fact that they have a bit of extra speed, a bit of extra charge bonus, and they have Frenzy. Frenzy of course gives them an extra 10 melee attack as well as 10% damage increase, and immunity psychology, so long as their leadership remains above 30. Because of course they don't have the highest leadership to begin with. 30 is pretty easy for them to hit, so although it says this gives them immunity psychology, don't expect it to last that long, because they will lose their leadership quite quickly, because of all the things, they do take damage quite quickly. And because of that, their leadership won't hold out for that long. But in terms of, as long as you're not dealing with a missile heavy faction, or something that's good at cleaving through lightly armoured infantry, or Skaven, well, even maybe against Skaven you could bring them, but they're very good damage dealing front line. Typically you want to mix them in with some goblins, so the goblins take the damage and these guys follow in from behind. But as a whole, as it stands, they're pretty good on their own with just their damage dealing capabilities and their physical resistance. Next, we're on to the ROR Fanatics. These guys are really good in the fact that they are unbreakable. Again, going back to that theme of greenskin leadership, these guys being unbreakable is amazing. The fact that they will just never run is really good, especially when you pair them with the Loons of 8 Peaks. This used to be a lot better because this used to not have a health point limitation on it, so this unit could use it even when there was like 3 models left, which, since it's unbreakable, is going to happen more often than it's not. But this unit has been nerfed down a bit by the fact that it can't use it when it reaches 25% health, which at the end of the day, they are still goblins. They are going to die kind of quickly. Even if they are unbreakable and their leadership's huge, they're still going to crumble quite quickly. But as it stands, still a really, really good infantry unit, especially for the greenskin roster. Their stats are very decent as it stands, and when you start adding in all that melee attack bonuses they can get, it can get to quite a special area. And of course the 8 peak loons will really help clear out the front line, assuming you have the micro to manage using it, because you do really need to aim it awkwardly sometimes, especially depending on where the unit is. So I wouldn't recommend bringing any unit with the Loons of 8 peaks unless you're prepared to micromanage them. It does take a bit of focus to know where and when to put it. Now we've been through the first entire row of infantry, but you'll notice that we are now only getting to anti-large infantry. These guys, Orc Bigens, we'll also talk about the Savage Orc Bigens because they are night and day basically. Well, not night and day, they're very similar. Orc Bigens are basically just big beefed up stat wise of Orc Boys. As you can see there, they're just a complete stat improvement of regular Orc Boys. But their main focus is the fact that they do have anti-large. It's only 8 bonus versus large, but with those extra stats that they're already getting and the fact they already have enough melee attack, these are basically your anti-large infantry for all intents and purposes. The Savage Orc variant drops the 50 armor that they get and 6 leadership, 6 melee defense in exchange for speed, charge bonus, and of course that frenzy and physical resistance, which can get their melee attack up to quite high just as a baseline. Like it gets up to about 56 just against anything large with that frenzy and with that bonus versus large. So as it stands already, they already hit pretty hard against large. It's just the fact that they need to sort of catch up to them with that speed. Things can usually just run through them. But even using them as just a basic infantry, as you can see, they have way better stats than basic Orc Boys, and because of that, they all function pretty well as infantry. Just as it stands, they don't have to be focused on large if there's nothing available. Although they don't have any shields, so they're not the best front line, and they're also quite expensive. Just 800 per frontline unit, and the fact that it's not got that much like armor or shielding, missile resistance, probably not the best thing to be bringing as a frontline. But you could certainly run like some goblins and some Orc Bigens as a mixture of a frontline. Goes with Savage Orc Bigens as well. It really depends on the situation on which one you want to use, whether or not you're worried about the high armor or if you just don't want to spend the extra money. Finally, the biggest and the baddest of the Greenskins infantry is Blackhawks. We'll also cover the... Actually no, we'll just go with just the basics for now. These guys are the elite infantry of the Greenskin roster. They have, as you'd expect, armoured and armour piercing, immunity psychology, again quite good in the infantry roster, a huge amount of health that actually goes across with all Bigens. 8,100 health is really big for any infantry unit. So just having that much health baseline is already pretty good. And then you pair that with 110 armour, it can usually mean that these guys are pretty hard to kill. Now granted, 72 leadership is kind of low for an elite infantry, but it's still pretty good. And with immunity psychology, they're not going to get terror-arrowed, so you shouldn't have too many problems with that. And of course, you look at 36 melee attack, but do bear in mind there are things like War and other melee attack buffs to apply to this. So they're by no means, this is not what they're going to be most of the time. Most of the time they're going to be hitting a lot harder, and with 50 weapon strength, they're going to be hitting a lot harder. If we look at the Crimson Killers, which are the RRR version, of course you have the stat increase, but it doesn't say this on the unit card. All it says is armed to the teeth, which really doesn't say much on it. You could sort of infer based on what it's saying. But for those of you that aren't aware, this basically means that Crimson Killers have splash attacks. If you haven't seen Zerk's video on it, I recommend you go check it out. These guys, I believe they can hit 2 models at once, basically, which it's just going to increase how much damage they're dealing doubly so, especially against infantry and that. But of course they don't have a shield, so they are a very nice target for missiles, especially armor piercing missiles, of course. So it depends. I think Greenskin infantry already does pretty well against other infantry as it stands. You usually don't need to be bringing Blackhawks that well, but with the cavalry in the state it is these days, the fact that Blackhawks will beat any infantry and nearly any cavalry that's like beneath their cost is pretty decent. Definitely can't say anything too bad about the Blackhawks. Next is into a surprising strength for the Greenskins. It's missile infantry. Goblin archers are very similar to like peasant archers. They have very good volume of fire, even if their missile strength isn't the highest. They also have expendables, so when they inevitably die, they're not going to affect the rest of the leadership of the army. And yeah, they're pretty standard. Their range isn't quite as good as say peasant archers, but with their volume of fire, it's quite good with just how much damage they can put out, even though they're just goblin archers. Night Goblin archers are very similar to the difference between goblins and night goblins. Really, if you want that stalk and vanguard, that's what you're really buying it for. They are improved in melee, but it's not going to change much. This probably won't change the outcome of any fights all too much because their stats are still terrible. They do of course also have poison, but poison has been nerfed recently, so it isn't quite as good as it used to be. Orc Boys have fewer models in their unit, but the trade-off is they're half decent in melee, and the fact that they actually do some more damage with their missiles. So you're trading off that volume of fire for actually harder hitting missiles, which it works pretty well in tandem. They also have an increased range, so in my opinion I think Orc Boys usually do more damage than Goblin Archers will. Savage Orc Boys have a unique place in the fact that they are archers that will beat wolves. Dire wolves, scurvy dogs, chaos hounds, that sort of thing. They will beat most of them because of that frenzy, because of that physical resistance. Their melee attack can get up to quite a good degree. So long as they get a counter charge on wolves, they will beat them in a 1v1, which of course is really nice to have in a archer unit, especially because it's a faction that you're not usually going to be covering your back line because you're going to be rushing in usually. So it's very nice to have a unit that can hold its own, similar to Loth and Seaguard in that regard. Night Goblin Archer Fanatics, you don't bring these. I mean, the Fanatic ability is already hard to use on an infantry unit. You really don't need to try and use it on a missile infantry unit. The Rusty Arrows, these guys are a ROR Night Goblin Archer that comes with the ability to sunder armor, which of course is very nice considering that the missile infantry in the roster is not armor piercing. So usually if you're bringing a lot of missiles, you want to bring one of these just to sunder armor. Because of course if you're sundering this armor, then all the rest of your units are going to do more damage, which is always what you want. And yeah, going back over the missile infantry department, it's a surprising strength for the Greenskin roster, absolutely. All things considered, the volume of fire they can put out, it really does help them deal with single entities and that sort of thing, and also just like less lightly armoured infantry can also take quite a beating from their archers, which is really not what you'd expect from Greenskins, but it does tend to be the case, oddly enough. Next up is the Cavalry and Chariots department. We have quite a bit here. Starting off, Goblin Wolf Riders. These are your typical, well actually they're not quite typical, most light cavalry is more expensive than this. These are really, really cheap, expendable light cavalry. It's exactly what you think if you put goblins on wolves. Their leadership is terrible, their stats are terrible melee wise, their vanguard deployment, and they have good speed. That's really what's going for them. They are a backline harassing unit. You want to send these after archers or after skirmish cav. They might not even win against some archers and skirmish cav, but at least they're doing enough harassing that it causes them not to fire, or at least not fire on your important units. They do have that bronze shield to help with missile fire as well. The Moon Howlers are the ROR version of the Goblin Wolf Riders, who come with increased stats and fear. That is their only difference, is the fact that they cause fear. Everything else is a standard increase. Also the fact they're not expendable anymore, which is more of a downgrade more than anything else. So, not too good, honestly. I think if you get basic Goblin Wolf Riders to Gold Chevron, it is more expensive. So all in all, it is cheaper just to bring the Moon Howlers. So if you want a decent, quick-moving cavalry, then you may as well just not bring these and bring the Forest Goblin Spider Riders instead. These guys have so much more going for them compared to the Wolf Riders. They have reduced speed, so that can be they don't catch as much, but they have much improved stats and health. As well as that, they have Strider, and because of that, they can move through forests a lot easier, so if you're chasing units through a forest, you're much more likely to catch them. And they have poison. So of course with that poison, if they catch something, it's less likely to be able to get away because they're slower, and that means they also do less damage, and all in all, it's just a much better unit to use instead of the Wolf Riders, in my opinion. Next up, we have a more damage-dealing cavalry. The Night Goblin Squighoppers are armor-piercing, anti-infantry, immune psychology with high speed. These guys work not quite as well at chasing down skirmish cavalry, because they're more focused against infantry and armoured units, but they do work very well as a backline harassing unit. These guys will chew through archers, and they're very good just to charge into the back lines of the front line. Quite a powerful hard-hitting cavalry for the cost, absolutely. Orc Boys come at the same cost, but are, as you'd expect, when we change between Night Goblin War Boss and Orc War Boss, they are just a more generic version. These guys will beat a lot more of everything, but the trade-off is they aren't immune to psychology and they aren't as fast. So, although they do have the increased leadership, so that could be a trade-off, most of the time I'd say Orc Boys are better than Night Goblin Squidhoppers. They also come with their shield. Night Goblin Squidhoppers do not come with a shield, and they have more armor and more health. I think most of the time you're going to want to get the Orc War Boys over the Night Goblin Squidhoppers, just because of their pure stat increases. Because if you want the speed, then just take Spider Riders, because that's where the speed is. Or if you really want the speed, Goblin Wolf Riders. Boar Boys are more of your heavy cab, shot cav option. They're quite hard hitting, they have good charge bonus, good health, good armor. Just a really solid basic shot cavalry unit as a whole. Durkit's Squigs are the ROR version of the Night Goblin Squidhoppers. Their main increase is the fact that they come with a 25% missile resistance, which is it is a nice boon to have, especially when you're dealing with missile factions, but I mean, it's worse than a bronze shield, but the trade-off is the fact that it acts in all directions, as opposed to shield, which will only cover you from the front, which is especially good for a cavalry, because usually you'll be moving it in and out of an enemy formation. So it can work quite well. If you're up against a very heavy missile faction, I can recommend bringing this because of the trade-off of getting shot to pieces in the back. At least they'll take a lot less damage from it, and their melee attack's high enough that they can cleave through most ranged units really quickly. Next up, we have chariots. Boar chariots. These chariots are pretty okay, pretty decent. The only problem they face is they don't have the best things in terms of stats compared to other chariots. These guys don't seem to always hit quite as hard, and they have a tendency to get stuck as well, a lot more than other chariots. If you want to bring something anti-infantry and very chariot focused, just bring Grom. Bring Grom with some cavalry of his own. I think Grom works quite well with just some Orc War Boys. That's good enough. You don't really need war chariots any days with greenskins anyway. Next up, we have the Savage Orc War Boys. These guys are really good. These are really hard-hitting cavalry for their cost. They come, if you compare them to Orc Boys, they have 2 extra melee attack. Melee defense isn't so important when you're dealing with shot cavalry, as long as you're moving them in and out. You shouldn't need to worry about that too much. And they have that physical resistance anyway, so if they do get hit, at least they'll be taking less damage. And on top of that, they have Frenzy. So when you pair this Frenzy along with their charge bonus, on the charge they can do a really nasty amount of damage. Really good against other cavalry as well. Really good at surrounding. Even though it says they're anti-infantry, I think these actually work quite well against large units. Mainly because, moving on here to Bigen Cavalry, of course these are the Bigen versions of the cavalry, so they're just better stat-wise and are anti-large. But when you look at things in terms of cost, like, the cost is really like 200 gold extra, and these guys do about the same amount of damage to large as these things do. Yeah, most of the time you're just as good taking Savage Orc War Boys as you are any of the bigger units if you want to deal with large. And they're a lot more versatile as well, and you're not going to put as much money into one set of things. Not to mention that cavalry hasn't been doing too great these days, so you're just better off bringing infantry at the end of the day anyway. Finally, we are on to the ROR. Orc Boar with Bigen units. That's a really mouthful to pronounce. These guys' special thing is the fact they have Encourage, and also the fact they have a really large amount of armor. 100 armor is a lot more. It's 15 extra than the Orc Boar Bigen unit, and because of that, they're pretty good. They're a lot more of a holding cavalry in terms of the fact they take a lot less damage than other shot cavalry in the Greenskin roster. Like, they actually don't do as much damage as, say, Savage Orc Boar Boys, because they have less charge bonus and less melee attack. But they do hold a lot longer because of that 100 armor and that 78 leadership as well. And plus that Encourage as well means they're a lot better at holding in place, which isn't really what you want in a shot cavalry per se. So they're a bit of a mix of a unit in that regard. Next, we have another surprising strength of the Greenskin roster. It's their Skirmish Cavalry. Goblin Wolf Riders, Forest Goblin Spider Riders, and their respective RRs. If we just look at these two for now. Both of these work very well. Unlike Goblin Wolf Riders, these are exactly what you want. They're fast moving, poke and prod missile cavalry. And these guys are the same, but they have better improved stats, and they have more ammunition, and they have poison. And Strider, of course, as well. And Vanguard. Well, these guys also have Vanguard, but these guys are expendable as well, so that means if you lose these guys, it's not going to affect the rest of your army, which is even better for a skirmish cavalry. These guys, they did have a price increase in the recent update, so I don't know if they're quite as good as they used to be, but Greenskin Skirmish Cavalry used to be a must-have in almost every Greenskin army, just because it trades so well with everything. The damage output they can get for 400 gold is ridiculous. You can often expect, if a Skirmish Cavalry, this goes for not just for Greenskins, this goes for all general units, missile units, is if a unit uses up all its ammunition, it should be about doubling its price, which is where more expensive missile units can run into problems. But when it comes to a cheap missile unit like this, you can usually see Goblin Wolf Riders get 800 value as long as they use all their missiles up, which of course is really good for what you're paying. Same thing with Spider Riders, you get a pretty similar outcome, but the fact that they're slower, but they apply poison, so they don't usually need to worry about the speed as much. And because of that speed as well, they can usually outrun most things and just shoot constantly behind it, which works out very well in their favour. There isn't many units that can catch Greenskin Skirmish Cav. Looking at their RORs quickly, the Death Creepers are the same, except from they have Regeneration and Stalk, which similar to the I mentioned this in the with the new Centicals, that it's awkward having a Skirmish Cav with Regeneration unless you're dealing with other Skirmish Cav. Like, this makes them better at counter skirmishing because of course they take some prod, they dish out some prod, but they're healing up the damage they've taken, whereas the enemy isn't, so they're better at whittling down the opponent than they are being whittled down, if that makes any sense. So that can help in those situations, but apart from that, it doesn't come too much into play. The fire weakness you shouldn't probably worry about on a Skirmish Cavalry. But the strong ROR is of course the Morgrub's Mangy Marauders, which are the armor piercing is their main change up, and the fact that they're not they also have immunity psychology, which isn't going to come into play very often, and they're not expendable of course anymore, along with the rest of the RRs. But that armor piercing, having an armor piercing Skirmish Cavalry, these guys are really good. Whether or not it's shooting down gyrocopters, dragons, just poking and prodding on those large single entities, it's very, very, very good. You can often see these guys get upwards to 1,500 in value if they're just shooting a single entity for the whole game. That armor piercing cannot be undersold. Very, very nice to have on a fast-moving Skirmish Cavalry like these. Having a quick look at Goblin Wolf Chariots, they're not particularly good. The ROR's only bonus is the fact that it can Vanguard deploy and has extra missile strength. But aside from that, the Goblin Wolf Chariots themselves, although it says they have a lot of missile strength, that is including all of them added together. So they do not actually do that much damage overall, especially when you compare them to like Wolf Riders and that. And although their speed is 92 because of the awkward turning animations of chariots, they can sometimes just get caught, like quite easily. They can get caught much more easily than Skirmish Cav, and if one of them gets caught, it's a lot bigger of a hit if you lose one of them, because of course they only have 6 models. If you lose one of them, that's cutting your damage value by like a sixth, which is also losing all that ammo as well. It's generally a lot better idea just to bring Goblin Wolf Riders, and if you want a chariot that much, just bring boar chariots instead. Next, we are on to the monsters and beasts. You can tell that the Greenskin roster is pretty big, because we're only just getting to the monsters and beasts section. Squig Herd are basically you just compare them to Night Goblin Squig Hoppers. They're just the feraler version. If we go Night Goblin Squig Hoppers into Squig Herd, they have less health, less leadership, and less speed. But the trade-off is they actually are a bit more feral. They do more damage, they have a bigger charge bonus, and they have more armor because they don't have to protect the goblin on top. They also have Rampage, so that means once they reach a certain health pool, which they have quite a small health pool, so they're going to reach it pretty quickly, they'll go into Rampage. And they also have Squigs Go Wild, which I don't know why it exists. It basically means that so long as an enemy is within 30 meters, they have 12 extra leadership. It basically means that they have the same leadership thereabouts as Night Goblin Squig Herd. So why they didn't just have an extra 12 leadership, I don't quite know. It does basically mean that whenever this unit runs away, they don't come back very often at all, because they only have 36 leadership, which for reference is worse than trolls. So these guys, they're... I mean, if you really want to have that armor-piercing anti-infantry with flanking potential, I just recommend taking Nasty Skulkers, which are just way better in every regard. But these guys are a nice, cheap, damage-dealing, quick unit. So if you really want to bring them to just get around and harass some cavalry or some archers, or just in the back line of the front line, sure, why not? Go nuts. Squig go wild after all. Next, on to the ugliest of the group, the trolls. All 3 variants, and the RRR included. Right, let's get through this then. Basic trolls, pretty bog standard. You've heard of trolls before. I don't know if I need to go through them or not. I mean, I've covered them before. They're big, they're stupid, they run away easily, and they have regeneration. There, end of story. River trolls are unique in the fact that they provide an AoE -6 melee attack to all enemies in range, which can be quite helpful because you don't typically have trolls on their own. You'll typically have them mixed in with another unit. So this will help not only the troll live longer, but it will also help the unit that's fighting alongside the troll live longer, because it's going to be giving the enemy that -6 melee attack, which can be quite a sizable amount, depending on the unit you're fighting. Of course, if you're fighting like Grimgor, this isn't going to do much, but when it comes to the basic front line, it can help engagements quite a bit. Apart from that, compare them to basic trolls, they just have more weapon strength, less weapon strength, and more melee defense. So these river trolls are more of a holding unit than other trolls, because of that reduction to melee attack they can give and the extra melee defense they already have. Stone trolls are where it really does get special. Stone trolls have a good chunk extra armor, 4 extra melee attack, 40 extra weapon strength, which is quite big, 10 extra charge bonus. Wait, let me compare them to trolls, in fact. Yeah, 20 weapon strength, 2 extra melee attack, 30 extra armor, 10 extra charge bonus, but their main specialty is in the fact they have 20% missile resistance. Of course, these trolls are quite weak to missiles, so having that 25% missile resistance basically gives them bronze shields, which is quite helpful indeed. Magic resistance is negligible. It's just having a unit with this much armor and regeneration. It's why Grom the Punch is so good. Stone trolls are really nice to pair with Grom or Blackhawk big bosses, but as can be said with all trolls, the fact that they're not immune to psychology and the fact they have such low leadership is their main weakness. The Swamp Things, I clicked them off. There you go. The Swamp Things, their uniqueness is just the fact that they cause terror, which does also make them immune to terror, which should be noted. It doesn't make them immune to psychology, so like certain leadership debuffs will still affect them, but when it comes to fear and terror, they are immune to them. So if you aren't bringing Grom or a Blackhawk big boss and you really want to bring trolls, bring these ones because they're immune to terror, so they won't get terrored. And they cause terror themselves, which is always nice. Next up, the Giant. The Giant is pretty giant. 9,400 health is a lot. 600 weapon strength is a lot. These guys are just big, lumbering, and they hit hard, and they have 100 leadership, so they're going to stick around for a while as well. Surprisingly better suited at taking down single entities more than anything else, even though they're not anti-large. They hit hard, they have a lot of health, they don't die quickly, but they are such a lovely target for missiles. 30 armor, and they have no missile resistance. They're big, they're slow. It's their main problem, more than anything, the fact that they just get shot to pieces. It's one of the reasons why they're so good against vampire counts, because of course they don't have any missiles. Giants suffer from the very much the same problem as most large do, but even more so, more than any other large, because they just die to missiles really easily. So if you expect the opponent to bring missiles, don't bring these. Like ever. They're not great. They're not bad, but they're not very good either. Especially when you compare them to other monsters, such as the Arachnarok Spider, which, although it has less, quite a bit less health, its trade-off there is it has 120 armor, so non-armor piercing missiles it doesn't really need to worry about too often. Not to mention it has a lot more speed, so it can get away from or get out of range of missiles a lot easier. Its main focus is taking down anti-large. It's taking down large targets even, with that anti-large bonus of 14, which adds into its melee attack. It has some guys on top, some little goblins that just shoot off poison rounds into the crowd, which is always nice. It's a nice way to apply poison to enemy units. The main weakness of the Ragnarok Spider... How are you doing there, Incap? The main weakness of the Ragnarok Spider is the fact that it has 55 leadership, which is really, really low, especially for a single entity. It can often be seen running away before it's finished fighting anything, and especially when it comes to a single entity this big, you'll typically just see it get chased down, and it won't be able to stop running because it can't stop running once it's being chased off the map.
So I heard you talking about orcs and I had to come in.
Yeah, we're going through Greenskins because the first Greenskin roster session was not recorded.
Not even watching a stream, I literally just heard you talking about Greenskins.
Did you?
Where
Yeah.
Are you at,
Ragnarok Spider.
Yeah.
Just finished talking about it.
It's a bit of a stupid question, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember it was, yeah.
So Fungus Chungus next?
The Rogue Idol.
Yep,
the Rogue Idol. He is even more health than the Giant. He's basically the Giant increased by quite a large margin. The plus side there is the fact that he actually has armor and more health, so he's going to live through those missile attacks quite a bit more, but he is still a giant target.
No plus side. He gives +4 leadership to all units map wide.
Yeah, as long as he's alive, he gives an extra 4 leadership map wide, which is quite nice. Actually, no, it's as long as his health point is more than 25%, which I mean, he has 1,200 health. That's a lot of health to get through.
And the better part, you can have 2 giants and him in the same army. So against counts,
yes.
pretty nasty.
Yeah, this is a pretty reliable way to beat counts because they can't do much. Maybe Ragnarok Spiders would be better, just because they have more large to worry about in the Vampire Count roster, but that'll work pretty well against any Vampire Count army. Rogue Idols, of course, are more focused anti-infantry, but they do hit still very hard. Especially if you put in War, you don't usually need to worry about their melee attack and stuff. They actually have a missile resistance of 15% as well as that armor, which makes them already a lot better than the Giant.
And they have a crumbling ability.
Yes, they have their... Well, they don't crumble for some reason, they still run away.
Literally. I think it's literally...
Yeah, it's rumble and ruin. Basically, whenever they reach a certain point...
Health state.
Their health state, I think it's every 25%. They do a bombardment around them, which does a decent amount of damage. And they gain 40%. They basically gain more weapon damage, but lose armor. So the ultimate phase of that is they get an extra 120% armor piercing damage, but they lose 90 armor. They also go into rampage once they reach that point.
But also a good thing there is, if you're playing against orcs, and somebody's walking us up with a big blob of black orcs or goblins, you keep shooting it, it's going to damage the orcs around as well. Because bombardment, I think, damages...
It does damage friendly units as well, so once they reach those health... You really want the Rogue Idol sort of off on its own. You don't want it mixed in with your infantry, because when this triggers, it'll deal damage to your units as well.
That will not support your infantry very well.
No, not very well. It's much more of a... But at the same time, you don't want it to get surrounded, because if this thing runs, then it's quite slow. So it'll be chased off quite easily, even by like just some cheap infantry.
It's high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Well, I mean high risk, very minimal reward.
Yeah, not the hugest of rewards, unless you're playing against vampire counts, because again, it is very slow. So things can just usually...
particularly in a depth dwarf player, then it's brilliant.
Yeah, if a dwarf player has brought no ranged units, then this is amazing.
For some reason, we don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why, but if they do.
Clearly an average dwarf player.
But its speed is quite a bit of a weakness. Same thing with the Giant, it just can't catch most things. If it's chasing something, the enemy will just run away. That'll be the end of it.
The better version of it now, while you're on Bigens?
Yeah, actually we'll cover this, yeah. The Bigen is a Cygor, basically.
A Orc Cygor?
It is an Orc Cygor, basically.
A Sork?
It is much more expensive than a Cygor, which is its trade-off, but it can replenish its own ammo.
Right. It's also a lot more durable than a Cygor.
Yeah, obviously a lot more durable, a lot better in melee.
And range.
Yeah. Really good against vampire counts again, but it's not going to do terribly well against most stuff. Either. Yeah, not too bad against Chaos, I'd say. Or High Elves, I could also say. High Elves could be...
to a degree, I guess, because it's...
If they bring like one cannon and stuff.
Even with 1 or 2 cannons, I think they'll be shooting it so much they'll be ignoring everything else.
Yeah, there is that, but that is a lot of your money. That's like 3,000.
It's a lot of your money, but then it has so much armor, it's probably going to negate a good chunk of that damage.
Yeah, well, all the non-armor piercing will negate probably.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. Armor piercing doesn't exist.
No, yeah, fake news.
Fake news, guys.
But yeah, the big one, probably a better version in most situations is the Rogue Idol, just because that throwing attack can be really devastating. I mean, you've seen what the Cygor can do. It's basically the same as the Cygors. The rock throw.
Cygors have magical damage. I don't know if these guys do. I don't.
Basic Cygors don't. It's the Iron War that does.
Oh, do we not? Okay.
Yeah, these guys don't have, but I think actually just more damage.
I think they're more accurate as
Maybe,
well.
yeah.
They always seem, if you ever play against me and I have a unit chosen, for example, in Chaos, and you should have chosen, every rock will hit. No one will miss. Whereas I do it against you, yeah, I won't be able to hit a goblin.
We will hit a spider.
I won't be able to hit bloody fucking dragon.
From point blank.
Yeah, you could be stood next to it and you still miss.
So yeah, it does have that ranged attack, but there is that trade-off of the fact that this is 3,000 gold you're having sitting in the back line.
One thing we actually haven't mentioned with these guys, I'm not sure if you mentioned at all, with War, their melee attack's pretty fucking disgusting.
Yeah, that goes with all Greenskin units. I mentioned this.
This one particularly, because I think it's at like 60 to start with. So
73 to start with.
Okay.
So that gets up to 97.
Straight to 100. It's 40, isn't it? Oh,
no. That's a big War, you think?
That was old War, wasn't it? 44, yeah.
But yeah, current War is at 24.
Here we go, or Fist of Gork, or anything.
Yeah, all those melee attack buffs that Greenskins have access to.
100 of those. Well, except for Fist of Gork, goes straight to like 98, 97.
Yeah, which is already, plus that bonus versus infantry, that's already enough to hit everything and anything.
What was the bonus versus infantry, Auto?
It is
80?
25.
Oh,
so that's 25 extra melee attack.
What's his arm piercing?
450.
So 450 damage is guaranteed. Now, bonus versus infantry, that's just base damage add-on, isn't it? It's not AP as well.
I think it's a trade. It's a
separate thing.
No, it goes with the ratio. So like of that 25, some of it is turned to armor piercing. Yeah, that sort of thing.
So basically, against infantry, you get
it's not half and half. It depends on what the ratio of the.
Yeah, you get about 453 damage against infantry with AP.
Yeah.
Nasty.
It's basically the reason why the Bigen can beat every infantry in the game. I think it's just catching it is the problem.
It sounds better than it is because obviously, if it was this good, everyone would use it.
Yeah, and when you think about it, the most expensive infantry unit in the game is probably like 1,000. Yeah, 1,000 to 300, 400. I think.
What would be the most expensive?
I mean, let's see. Crimson Killers are 1,450.
Yeah, Crimson Killers would be the most expensive.
So yeah, it doesn't usually get more expensive than that, and when you need to kill 2 of those to get its money back,
or
let alone catch 2 of them. Yeah, it could also. They can be good against lords, but that's usually just where the Arachnok Spider comes in when it comes to them going after like lords and single entities.
Honestly, if you're ever playing Greenskins, you're like, oh, should I put a big gun? Think, would an Arachnok do it better? Should I bring these trolls? Think, Stone Trolls will do it better.
Yeah.
Just Stone Trolls and Arachnoks, nothing else exists.
That's all you need. Speaking of Arachnoks, the Arachnok Queen.
Particular Arachnok you want to bring, that's the Queen. You always want to bring the Queen.
Yeah, I think you always want to bring the Queen. Or you want to bring... I actually noticed something, they earlier, they updated it, so you know how you can put the Goblin Great Shaman on an Arachnok Spider?
Yeah.
It used to be that version was worse than a basic Arachnok. They've changed it to the same now. Yeah, they're the same now, which is nice.
But the reason you always want to put a Queen over a normal Arachnok is if you put a normal Arachnok, if you scroll down Willow to Arachnok set. If you put a normal Arachnok, you have to bring Runoff, which is 350, which brings your price total up to about 2250. Spend the extra 150, get the Arachnok Queen, and you can have basically 6 infantry running off units, which are Spiderlands. Really good for chasing off units, really good for just tying down missiles, which of course are a weakness to it. Actually, can you gold chevron up the normal Arachnok a sec? Like, how much is a max? That's 100 gold extra than the Arachnok Queen. Yeah, the Arachnok Queen in every way is better. She's triple chevron for 100 cheaper. You get 3 runoff infantry. Sorry, 3 runoff cavalry. Whereas you might have to bring 6 Wolf Riders for the same price as her and her ability. Yeah, we get 5 of those actually. And she gets more, probably like some sort of little bit more melee attack or melee damage or range or missile damage or something. It's a tiny little missile damage change. Yeah, but there's always different line. But of course that Arachnok does suffer from the leadership, but when you go chevron it up to get the Arachnok Queen, 65 leadership is a lot better in terms of leadership. Or if you combine her with Skarsnak as well, give her a bonus for Sarge. Yeah, that is the old combination, isn't it? One thing you haven't mentioned, Willow, here, which I do like about Arachnos specifically, is they're actually good anti-skirmish, because their range is like 100. Yeah, they have really good range. They don't fire off the most, but I mean, those shots are enough to kill a model. But usually. Even if they don't fire off the most, they're poison. So that will slow that thing down by 20%. Yeah, and that's just a good way to apply poison to like all around the map. Yeah, it's about 15%. It will slow it down, and I think it shoots faster than like most I can see this on stream now. Most range units have about a 7 to 10 second reload time. This thing has like a 3.5. So by the time they shoot off one volley, you've shot off 2.
Not to mention that I think it has multiple things firing. So I don't think
although you've only shot about 12 projectiles in that 7-second window, that's still 12 dead models potentially. That's still poison.
Not to mention that it has 200 ammo, so it's going to be shooting forever.
Oh yeah, it never. I think I tried to run out of ammo with this thing, and I never could.
No, you couldn't. You just can't.
The enemy broke, or I broke first.
Yeah, you could just use that missile attack at the end of the day if you really need to.
So essentially, with that, the best way you can look at the Arachnoid Queen is with 15% more movement speed than what she actually has.
Yeah.
Because whatever she's chasing would always be poisoned.
Always be slow and poisoned, yeah.
Only downside is you can't control what she shoots at.
No, yeah.
Big upside is though, she has Strider. So even if they run into forest, they're 15% slower, plus 25% slower, coming to about 40% slower.
Yeah, that means you can definitely catch them. Especially since he already has 57 speed, which is pretty good for a big old single entity.
Yeah, so with 50% extra speed, she's going up to about 62 speed.
Yeah, I definitely think the Arachnoid Queen is one of the best units in the Greenskin roster.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
It's just, of course, don't bring it against, like, dwarves or something. It's not that good.
Even against dwarves, though. You can hide in the forest.
I mean...
Not be impaired by shooting and just keep summon off runoff.
If you're going against dwarves, I might even just bring, like, a rogue idol.
I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Greenskins are still fairly tilted against dwarves. I'm not sure if there's new update.
They still beat dwarves, I think.
So what you could do is you could run your Arachnoid Queen, throw in a forest. I don't know if she can hide, I don't think so, but she has Strider, so she can move faster than normal abilities. She can then summon to run off, and by the time your front line's engaged, their range most likely, or should, be dead. You should have gotten to the back line or at least disabled it, so she can run in.
There is that unique bonus that, of course, with Thorok being the... Was it Thorok? What's his name? Is it Thorok?
Dwarf.
The new Dwarf Lord being really popular.
On steroids.
Yeah, with him being so popular, he is a large lord because everyone puts him on his chair.
Oh, true.
Secret bonus versus large versus dwarves. Who would have known it would be OP?
Secretly, CA put this in just to fuck with him.
But speaking of good against dwarves, I'm going on now to Snotling Pump Wagons. These
Terrible,
guys...
never bring them.
Only against dwarves you bring them, I think.
Skaven are actually quite fun.
Oh yeah, actually against Skaven as well works quite well because you can
I think the only good version is the Flappers.
Yeah, Flappers have that. If we just look at all variants real quick, basic version, Flappers and basically they're chariots sort of thing, quick moving cheap chariots. The Flappers have speed and the Spiker Rollers have armor sundering.
I think the ROR is the good one because they don't have the expandable fin.
Yeah, they do. They're expendable.
Do they? But they are good though because I think, as I've worked out, this Snotling Pump Wagon Flappers has the best bonus versus infantry and the best charge with its mushroom ability.
Yeah, it's 75 bonus charge bonus.
Yeah.
And 15 bonus versus infantry.
Yeah,
so basically 90. Charge. That's 90 charge bonus basically against infantry.
Yes, pretty nasty.
Which at the end of the day basically means you run through literally any Skaven, Greens or Dwarven front line.
It's good against a lot of factions, but to use it, you've got to micro it a lot. And for like most people, yeah, you're not going to be able to do it. Like even probably Willow, myself, like us, all of us, we probably struggle to do that sort of thing so well. Like it's good for runoff as well. It's got decent speed. It's like 60, 70, 80 speed.
Yeah, Flappers also have Strider as well.
Oh,
so they ignore terrain penalties here.
Of course they do. They fly.
Hover.
Yeah, they have like I think the ROR one has like a bonus again to minus attack or does damage.
Yeah, but it does an explosion whenever it charges, I think. So
obviously, again, pretty nasty.
Yeah, pretty nasty. Although you should bear in mind, I'm pretty sure all of these will die to anything that isn't infantry.
Yeah.
Pretty damn quick. So that's basically why they're really only good against like green.
Most things won't really be able to catch them.
Yeah, basically why they're only good against Skaven and dwarves. Can be good against like some elf factions. You just need to keep them away from everything large. And if you have the micro to do that, go for it.
Fin as well, if you call a WoW with them as you're charging in, I can't.
Yeah, that's gonna just destroy.
It also gives them a charge bonus.
It does also increase the charge bonus. Yeah.
So basically, you just front line. Dead.
Dead, yeah.
It doesn't exist. It never existed.
Next, rock lobbers. Really.
Lob rocks?
Yeah, they're really simple, cheap catapults. They're really inaccurate at range, but as things get closer, they can be just as accurate as like a cannon. Which can be good against like those tightly packed unit formations. High elves, dwarves. That's about it.
Skaven.
What?
Well, the only reason I say that is because Skaven units are so widely spread out at long range, you physically can't miss them.
I know, but you're going to be hitting like Skaven slaves.
No, like even against like Stormvermin, the unit is so dense.
Why are they bringing Stormvermin?
Some people are just very dumb.
I see. Yeah, good point.
Point and per case.
Yeah.
Me.
Point made.
But
yeah.
People will bring like a unit of, say, the Council Guards. That's a 120 unit. I think they have like 5 or 6 ranks of infantry, which obviously is quite big. And if you bring the ROR as well, which gives minus leadership.
Yeah, the ROR has the effect. Ooh. Oh no, it doesn't. It has blinded. Which
really?
Is,
oh,
yeah.
did they remove it?
No, it's a different effect. For some reason, it gets blinded. I don't know why.
I could have sworn it used to have minus like
leadership. You might be thinking of the Goblobber, which is the dwarf one there.
I am.
Yeah. This is the Hammer of Gork. Yeah, the Hammer of Gork has the blinded effect, so whatever it hits has minus 24 melee attack, minus 24 melee defense, and minus the accuracy for 10 seconds. Yeah.
It's a bit stupid though, because you never want to be counter sniping with these things, because they cannot counter snipe very well.
No, because they can't hit anything at the range.
For this to affect, you have to either hit directly or very close to it. But they're not accurate. That's like, you know, trying to hit something big with something small. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, they're quite awkward to use. I say like maybe if you're playing on a small map, rock lobbers can be nice against dwarves and like high elves, but it's only if you're on a smallish map, because otherwise their accuracy, they just can't hit anything.
But at that point, like,
you're already rushing the enemy.
The normal goblobbers are going to do that.
Yeah,
even better.
Not even. Yeah, not. Yeah, just bring regular goblobbers in that situation. Don't bring the Hammer of Gork.
No, the Hammer of Gork is good, but it's situational.
Yeah, its effect is a bit strange.
I'm pretty sure it affects your troops as well, so you can't even shoot.
I don't think it does. I think when they changed poison, they did it with all of the effects as well.
This is CA, come on, let's not give
I know Curse of the Bad Moon doesn't affect your troops, so I'd assume blinded doesn't. Yeah.
It used to be very annoying.
That's why it's so good. You can just pop it on yourself and don't care. It just hurt your troops, but it doesn't have the debuff effect. Final artillery piece, the Doom Diver.
Dun, 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 dun.
The second flying unit in the game.
Used to be godlike. Third flying unit of Greenskins Widow.
Third, yeah, I meant third, sorry.
Used to be the fourth, actually, Widow. We're forgetting about the flappers.
They're hovering. Doesn't count.
They technically fly for a second.
They just hover.
These used to be the best unit in Greenskins. Like one of the top 2.
They used to be very good at sniping, yeah.
Very accurate.
Well, they are still really good at sniping.
They are.
It's just
like 50 goals.
The green, yeah. It's just how like the greens since then Greenskins have gotten like Stone Trolls, Arachnarok Queen, Skarsnak. They just have ways of dealing with large stuff that's more suited to their playstyle. Like, of course, Doom Divers aren't affected by WAR, so they don't get any bonus from that.
One thing that Doom Divers do have, which is really good, and I'm not sure if Willow mentioned this, although I'm sure he will, because he knows I use against him every time he picks the Tomb Kid subfaction.
Yeah.
If you give them Fist of Gork, their missiles have magical damage.
They do, yes.
And they are heat seeking. They will. So hypothetically, now, say you got a unit of Hex Waves, you cast Fist of Gork on them, they will shoot the Goblin at them, and if you move that Hex Wave, they will continue to follow it for a good distance until it either crashes or hits them. And they are very accurate. So
yeah, the accuracy for these guys are really good.
It's a bit stupid for what it is.
Yeah, the trade-off is there that they don't have as much missile strength as, say, a cannonball, but a cannonball's not always going to hit. These are basically always going to hit. I'd say like 90% of the time they hit.
90% of the time, yeah. They're heat-seeking. So
as opposed to cannons, which is like 50 or 40%.
The only thing they're a bit dodgy at is hitting Pegasus. Because if you have a
I mean, everything's dodgy hitting Pegasus.
But if you have a Flying Lord on the Dragon, they're going to follow that, and a Sitbox is so big to hit it. But on a Pegasus, sometimes they can just go underneath it. But that's about it.
Alright then, well, that is it for the Greenskin roster.
Well, actually, Willow, before you finish, top 3 units for Greenskins.
Top 3 units, in my opinion, for Greenskins?
S3 non-Lord units.
Okay. Non-ROR or ROR included?
Everything.
Everything. Okay, in no particular order. The Arachnarok Queen.
Yeah.
Goblin Wolf Riders, Archers.
Okay, yeah.
And probably Orc Boys.
Oh, for me, I mean, I'm not going to be too much different from you there, but I agree. I would have to say the Arachnarok Queen, Forest Spider Riders, just because they have Strider and Poison, and the ROR is invisible. It's very annoying.
Yeah, it's quite annoying, yeah. You're right.
And that's where it gets hard, because Stone Trolls are good.
Yes, I might say Stone Trolls actually instead of Orc Boys.
You know what's actually really good? Savage Orc Biggins.
Savage Orc Biggins do hit quite hard. Yeah.
And you can... no. Yeah, no, Stone Trolls. They're better.
Yeah, this is probably, in my opinion, the trio that works so well.
And then the best hero, including Lords, hand down, is the Black Orc Big Boss.
Because that immune psychology, yeah.
Including Skarsnak, Wazag, Grimgor's top. You can't top Grimgor, and if you try, I will kill you. But Black Orc Big Boss, put him on its mount, and he gets 150 AP from nowhere. Give him the helmet thingy, and he gives you no thinky run hitty.
Yes, exactly. What you said.
there's very few units in the York army that are bad. Like even Nasty Skulkers, for example.
I think Nasty Skulkers is quite good. I think on the worst end of Greenskin units, I'd say I like the Chariots and Night Goblins. But that's not even
Night
bad.
Goblins. Give poison. Fanatics can still rip a unit apart.
Yeah, just compare them to regular Goblins, they're usually better.
I think on the worst end, I'd have to say over Goblin Archers. Like
I mean, even in their volume of fire, I'd say Night Goblin Archers on the worst end.
Even against Coast, they're actually really good because they can just shoot so quickly. I mean,
so much volume of fire.
Like even
there's just not many bad units, but I do have to get onto the Norsca roster, so I'm going to go into that now.
I will say one thing just before we finish.
Nasty
Skulkers against what's that Tombkin unit everyone uses? The
Sepulchral Stalkers.
They can beat them one-on-one.
Yeah, if they get that winning bonus, then boom, yeah, they destroy them.
You put them in because they have a bonus where if you're winning, you get more.
12 melee attack and 40% extra damage.
Yeah, so you throw them into Nasty Skulkers even on the edge of the map, and no Skulkers are dead.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go on to the boys from the north.
Yes.
Chaos. Discount Chaos. No,
discount Chaos. No, I think these days they're discount Chaos.
Chaos is better than them?
I think Chaos is better than them these days.
Oh yeah, they got nerfed, didn't they?
Starting off with Marauder Chieftain, he has some mount options: horse, chariot, mammoth. We'll talk about mammoths later.
You never bring him though.
But you don't bring him. Let's be honest, Norsca only has 2 Lord options. They have 1.5 Lord options.
They have one, and the other one's a troll.
Yeah.
They have one option.
The Flaming Axe of Cormac is nice and all. It gives fire damage and some extra damage, but it's nothing too special. There ain't too much about the Marauder Chieftain it's going from. He is just a worse version of the one everyone takes, is Wolfric.
The only good thing he has going for him is he has a chariot. That's it.
So does Wolfric.
Wolfric has a chariot?
Yep, Wolfric has a chariot option. Nobody puts him on a chariot option.
Wow. Yeah, I used to main this faction and I didn't even know that because why the fuck would I bring him on a chariot?
Yeah, so Wolfric is good for the following reasons. He comes with Sivang, which is a powerful wind spell that does pretty good damage for what it is. That you get 3 charges of it, it doesn't cost any winter magic, and it's quite cheap at a green, like 143 gold.
And it casts very quickly.
Very quickly as well, very hard to dodge.
Quicker than you'd expect. It's not hard to dodge, but...
He has a powerful Hex ability that you can use for Assassin, where it reduces speed, minus 40 melee defense, and minus 30 armor.
It's called Trophy Taker.
Yeah. 100 Champions it's called.
Trophy Taker.
100 Champions.
1.0.
He also has, of course, the Fight or Die, which is the Norskin leadership AoE buff that also gives melee attack, same as the War Boss's ability he has. And for items, he has the Sword of Tvrog, which, if he's assuming he's not on his mammoth or on his chariot, because when he's on his mammoth or chariot, he gets armor piercing. This basically doubles his damage because it gives a plus 90% to base weapon damage. So because of this, there's basically 2 versions of Wolfric. You can either put him on his horse with the Sword of Tvrog. Yeah, I'm not going to try and pronounce that. And this basically means he can destroy any single entity as long as it isn't too heavily armoured. He drops his Hex ability on it, and then he drops Sword of Tvrog, and his damage gets up to like 700 or so, or closer to 800 in fact. He can destroy any caster, any lightly armoured lord. He'll do insane damage to. He doesn't have the highest health pool, which is a problem when he's on his horse, but he still hits so hard. Quick thing to note as well is that Norscan units have what's called Rage. This basically means the longer they're in melee for, the better bonuses they get. Starting off, when they're in for 45 seconds, they get 8 leadership. When they're in for another 45 seconds, they get an extra 10% physical resistance. And then when for another 45 seconds, they get an extra 5 melee attack. Now, the other version of Wolfric is to put him on his mammoth and then to drop the sword. This way, he's basically a mammoth. Yeah.
There's one thing to forget, Willow, just before we go into that. On foot, he's not terrible. Silver Shield against them like High Elves.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, even on a chariot, he's not too terrible. But the horse option and the mammoth option are just so good compared, relatively. Now, moving on to the other sort of lord choice. Most of the time, you're going to bring Wolfric.
It's Wolfric.
The other option is Throng. Throng is basically only an option against really a lot of large. When you're up against a lot of large options like Lizardmen and Chaos, and what's the other? Bretonia is the main one you bring him against. He comes with, of course, Foe Seeker. He is a troll, of course, although he has decent leadership for a troll, which is a nice change. He has Copious Vomit, which is a magic missile with short range, but it can be a bit awkward to fire it, so most of the time you can drop it.
Just drop it, yeah.
Fight or Die again. His item is the Wintertooth Crown, which he gives all allies in range for 24 seconds unbreakable. Can be pretty good sometimes.
It can be clutch. There used to be a thing where you get a big blob of trolls, put them in the middle, run them in, and unbreakable.
Unbreakableness, yeah. Because you do get several charges with this, so ideally you want to use it more than once. But it's a bit of an awkward ability. The main thing with Throng is that he is an anti-large, big old troll. He has Frostbite, so anything he hits is reduced in speed by 35% for 10 seconds. Of course he has regeneration because he's a troll. 6,000 health is pretty good. And he's anti-large bonus of 28. Means that he gets up to like 88 melee attack against large units. That's why he's usually brought against Bretonnia.
He is situational but nasty.
Yeah, most of the time you bring Wolfric, but if you're really worried about large, there's no reason why you shouldn't bring Throg.
But then, we'll get onto it later, but if you're worried about large, there are other... Basically, Norscan is the embodiment of
if you had, yeah, they are the monster hunters, so... We hunt the monsters that halt your cowardly dreams and all that.
Also dwarves occasionally.
Yeah, hunters are dwarves as well. Looking at hero options, the generic casters are the Shaman Sorcerers. Got to turn off unit caps so I can have them all at once. They have a option of a horse or a chariot mount option. It's not as good as the Wargore chariots, or the Beastmen ones. It's really not as good as that. Don't think it is.
Caution over busted unit.
Yeah, they don't have any mana regeneration. They don't have arcane conduit or anything like that. So they do run out of magic quicker than most. The options for your magic here are death, fire, and metal. That is on the
best. Wait,
depending on your situation, they can all be pretty good.
Fire's always the best, you know. If your name's incapable and you cast Flame Vortex, it will hit 99% of the time.
Yeah, exactly how you want it to as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
They get 3 scrolls. Take them how you will. And yeah, they're pretty generic casters, as you might imagine. Sticking with the caster theme, we'll talk about the Werkin in a minute. The other option for your caster is the Fimir Balefield. The Fimir Balefiend, which gives you access to fire and shadows. So that's the only way you're getting Law of Shadows if you want it. They have evasion, they have a missile resistance as long as their leadership is higher than 50%, and they have Arcane Conduit. They also come with the scrolls as well, but their main thing is the fact that because they're Fimir, they have magical damage and armor sundering, so you could just throw these guys into a unit to sunder their armor while the rest of your army actually does damage, and they have 400 weapon strength with armor piercing, which they don't have the highest melee attack, but that's pretty good weapon strength for a caster.
They have very... Do they not get a... Do you say about missile resistance? Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're pretty nasty for a caster.
They have a base of 15 and they get a 20% extra.
I was going to say they're just slow, but they are not slow.
No, they're not. They have 54 speed, so they don't even need a mount.
What's the downside to these guys, besides the price?
Yeah, their price is their only thing. And then also the fact that you can't get Law of Metal or Death with them. But that's not usually too much of a problem. Law of Shadows is pretty good, Law of Fire is pretty good as well, so most of the time you are taking a Fimir Balefiend as your caster option.
Yeah, they're always good. Werkin.
Yep, looking back now at the
One
Werkin.
unit in the game with the most broken bloody hitbox.
Yeah, it has a bit of an awkward hitbox, which really helps when it's a large killing thing.
It will jump through ranks of infantry like there are no ranks of infantry there.
Yes, because it wants to go straight for those large targets, because it has a anti-large bonus version of 36. It's a lot. It has 20% physical resistance, as do all skin rules. We'll get onto that in a bit. It also has a unique little item ability. I guess it's an ability where it gives all friendly units in range, 30 meter range, 10% missile resistance and 23 armor. Pretty good if you're worried about non-armor piercing, or I mean 23 armor is a pretty decent armor. So if you're like going up against an enemy that doesn't have a lot of armor piercing, this can be pretty good. Or if you're just worried about missiles,
very good against skirmish.
Yeah, really good against skirmish. If you're worried about that skirmish stuff.
What's the speed? The speed's like
65.
65. Okay, so you can't keep up with your skirmish, but it's good to stop him from like skirmishing down skin walls or other.
Yeah, if you have your more valuable units that you might be sticking them with. Although it is a purple ranked item, so it is 243 gold. Really just up to the faction you're playing against, whether or not you want to bring that.
It's where you can actually use it a lot.
Yeah. His item, he just gets Potion of Speed. He is very much your anti-large, quick moving. He's got regeneration and frenzy, so his melee attack gets up a bit more. Very much focused against killing large stuff. If you don't bring Throg, well, you could even pair him with Throg if you really want to kill large stuff. But if you bring Morfolk, this guy is your single entity that's after the large targets most of the time.
That's what I said. You could pair him with Frog, but later on there's a better pair that he goes with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's rare you see them. They are good, but there's other better options.
There's other options, yeah.
Including ogres.
Going first with infantry, Marauders are basically the exact. Actually, I wonder. I wanted to check this one out. They're the exact same as Chaos Marauders. I know they have the rage ability, but let's have a quick look.
They are, I think, the same.
They are 25 gold more, and their stats are exactly the same. The trade-off is that they get rage.
Rage, which is a good trade-off.
Really good, yeah, it's really good for 25 gold.
But again, they're Marauders. Let's be real, they're not.
Yeah, they're not doing much. Yeah, the leadership helps them stick around longer than average, but they don't usually make it to the final stage of their rage, because they are Marauders that only have 28 melee defense.
Either the trade-off of them is either what the fight is going to kill them, or they're going to kill it too quick.
Although,
there's nothing really in the middle they stick with.
Frankly, this is basically your only frontline option. Unless you're going for a bit of a different sort of frontline where you're going like heavy berserkers or you're going for Marauder champions or something.
Yeah, unless you're a bit of a sadist, then you go like...
Yeah, this is basically your only frontline option. This is mainly because the Marauder Spearmen, which are the Spearman variant, they don't have shields. They're of course more focused to anti-large and they have that more melee defense, but they don't have a shield, which is not great. They also have a much tighter formation, so missiles really do tear them apart. You only really want these guys if you're putting them like in the back line, defending some of your missiles or something. But apart from that, most of the time you're better off just going Marauders. Speaking of better stuff, just going with Marauders, next up is Marauder Great Weapons. These guys, comparing them to basic Marauders, they have 8 less melee defense, no shield, and the trade-off is that they're armor piercing and they have slightly better charge bonus and weapon strength. Now for 100 gold extra, that isn't quite as good as a trade-off. Mainly because they already die very quickly, and with 20 melee defense, these guys die really quickly. Especially when they have no shield and only 15 armor. If it was a more elite infantry, where you're like looking at Marauder champions, trading off for that shield for armor piercing, makes a lot more sense, but these guys are going to die so quickly they usually can't get a good damage output. So, yeah. You can argue, I'd say probably the only situation where you might be tempted to bring these is against dwarves. But even then you probably still want just some Marauders in case they have a lot of missiles. But, yeah, not the best great weapon unit in the game by far. Next up, the Icehorn Marauders. These are the RRR Marauder unit. They are quite unique in the fact that they have perfect figure and immunity psychology, which is really good. I'd say you almost always want this unit in your Norscan army. Their stats are way better. The fact they have perfect figure means they're always going to be fighting at 100%. That rage means they're going to fight even better. And then you throw in immunity psychology as well. It just makes them really, really good. Really, really solid infantry unit. I don't think there's a Norscan army that doesn't want this 90% of the time. Now onto some actual damage dealing infantry. Marauder Berserkers are exactly that. At 38 melee attack plus the frenzy plus their bonus versus the infantry, they can get up to a really, really high melee attack. Add that on top of their weapon strength, which is already at 52. 80 leadership means that these guys are exactly what you think. They're berserkers. They cleave through infantry really, really quickly.
But they are very nasty paired with another unit later on, which I'll mention when we come to it.
We'll get to it, yeah. Their uniqueness is they have Berserk instead of Rage. This is basically an upgraded version of Rage, which gives 20% physical resistance after 30 seconds, and then after another 30 seconds it gives 13 melee attack, and then after another 30 seconds it also gives Rampage. But that's 13 melee attack, plus the Frenzy, plus the bonus versus infantry of 5. You can see why these guys will absolutely cleave through any infantry unit, so long as it isn't too armoured. The trade-off is of course that they only have 24 melee defense, 15 armor, and they have no shield, so they will die pretty quickly.
They are very susceptible to Archer Fire, but with the Werkin, sort of could
get a bit of extra armor that more than doubles their armor.
They will die very quick still, but
it helps them.
If we go to the RR version, it's 300 more gold, but makes them unbreakable.
Yeah, 300 more gold, but they are then unbreakable and they cause fear, which is really good. And they of course have the gold chevron to increase stats, means their melee attack gets up to really like greenskin levels of insane. And their melee attack will usually reach about average out at about 70.
They are fucking nasty.
They will cleave through anything. The only downside is the fact that they have obviously quite a light formation, means they can get run through quite quickly by like heavy caravan and stuff like that. And of course they don't have shields or armor, so they will die kind of quickly, but that physical resistance that they get with rage can help them. So really could just mix these in with basic marauders if you need to, and they will just cleave through everything and anything that is, as long as it's not too armored. Even cavalry and large creatures will die pretty quickly to them as long as they're not armored, just because their melee attack gets up to that high of a level. Marauder champions are the quote-unquote elite infantry of the Norscan army. They're the armoured and armour-piercing respectively. Marauder champions are armoured and shielded, whereas Marauder champions with great weapons are just armoured and armour-piercing. Their stats are okay for elite infantry. 53 melee defense is pretty good for 1,000 gold, along with their rage, which could help out. They'll live even longer. Although in terms of elite infantry, they are probably on the worst end of elite infantry.
Who's this now? Champions?
Champions.
Champions are infantry.
Yeah, they're elite infantry, but quote-unquote elite infantry.
Yeah, they're pretty decent. They're not the greatest, they're not the worst. They're,
yeah, don't expect them to be like Lawmasters of Hoth or anything, or Chosen. They're just...
They're not something you rely on.
Yeah, they're better than Chaos Warriors, but not as good as Chosen, which fits their price point.
They're not too far away from Chosen, but they're not on the same level.
No. Pretty good against like Elven factions, from my experience.
Very good, yeah.
Because their armor, their shields, their general unkillableness.
So I'll mention this here, but there's two things they're particularly good against. If you're against High Elves, bringing all Marauders with shields, 2 Berserkers, and an old great Marauders with shields again, champions, and Wolfwick with shield. High Elves usually struggling against that.
Yeah.
Marauder champion, on the other hand, with great weapons, are very good against undead factions. Specifically counts because the high, I think it's weapon damage they have.
Weapon strength.
Yeah, I think it's
they have a good charge bonus as well.
Or is it the melee attack? I can't remember which one.
36 is okay.
One of them has a stupidly high melee attack. I think it's the shielded one.
The shielded, well, they both have the same melee attack.
Do they?
Yeah, the great weapons lose 21 melee defense.
Melee defense, that's it.
They lose out on.
Yeah, so basically the shield's really, really good for staying in combat. I think they have something like 54 melee
53.
Defense. 53, close enough. Really good. The more the champions in combat with great weapons are pretty good against counts.
Yeah, because they have a lot of armoured stuff that counts. You really do need that armour piercing. And when you factor in rage in that, they can usually survive just as well as other stuff. I mean, they'll still last longer than Marauders, even though they have that much less melee defense than the champion variant. They'll still live longer than Marauders.
And yes, that's pretty much it for infantry there.
Yeah, that's it for infantry. Well, on to now for missile infantry, like Marauders, Hunters. These guys are very short range, only 80 range, which is very short. They have armor piercing and shield breaker, so that reduces the level of shield on the unit they hit, which can be pretty good, especially when they're already armor piercing themselves. So if you're up against some bronze shielded elite infantry, that'll get through them and do some quite nice bits of damage. They're decent in melee, but they don't have the most health, so they're not going to last too long. Yeah. Awkward to use because the fact they have such a short range, they can barely throw a volley against the enemy front line if you put them behind your units. So ideally you want to set them in some kind of like skirmish situation where they can throw, run away, and then throw. But they don't have the most speed for that. But the shield breaker does definitely come in handy quite a bit. Marauder Hunters with Javelins have a bit extra range, and they are more focused against large. They have a 15 bonus versus large, so their missile strength gets up to 50 against large units. Not armor piercing, but those Javelins do 50 damage per missile, and there's 68 missiles being thrown.
They are
very good against large things, even if it's armoured.
Willow found this out the hard way
in
the tournament. Yeah. They are very good against Tomb Kings, because you bring 3 of those, and when Metal Caster, doesn't matter what you bring. You could bring Ketept on his Kitten of War.
Yeah.
Even though it's not Ketept who rides it,
it's
now
Camry.
is
It's
Cetra.
Cetra, that's one.
And they will rip them apart. Because like what I said, 68 shots, unit of 4.
50 missile strength.
That's about 240 shots at about, I'm going to really fuck this maths up here, 10,800 damage if they all hit.
Yeah, which they are pretty accurate.
And these guys, you know, they're all day throwing spears. Like the right arm is 4 times bigger than the left arm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Partially to do with spear chucking.
Yeah, partially.
Partially.
But you can
bonus
also
lasts at 15.
So they get up to 50 missile strength versus large stuff.
Yeah.
The best thing to use these with, if you're worried about large armoured monsters, is you can use a Metal Caster, Plague of Rust, overcast that, minus 60 armour. And if that's not enough, use a Familiar, and then you can sunder their armour.
You're forgetting the one thing, Willow. If it's a Lord, you can put on Wolfric's Fist.
And you can also, for the Lord, you can use Wolfric's thing to reduce armour by a further 30. So
it reduces armour as well?
Yeah, that reduces armour. So that's 30, that's 60, that's 90, that's 120 armour you can reduce something by.
I was just thinking, they can't move. Their movement speed.
Yeah, they can't move, and they have reduced armour. And then you can reduce armour with a Familiar, and you can use a Metal Caster to further reduce the armour. You can reduce armour by 120 on a Lord or Hero.
And although you're on Familiar now, you can also class. And I know this is getting ridiculous. You guys are probably thinking, the fuck do we have to do Orcs for? You can cast Flame Sword on them to give them 25% more damage.
Yeah, more damage if you also bring a Firecaster as well. Yeah.
What's that? 25%. That's about 60 damage each.
Yeah.
You basically, essentially, click on a Lord and go die, and it just dies.
It just dies, yeah.
Yeah. But it's a bit high risk because obviously you snipe your Lord. If let's say you're against Tombkins, we have Cetra, brilliant, and they have 2 Caskets of Souls, you can guarantee you lose at least 1 or 2 of these units before you get close.
It does rely on them having a big monster that comes close to the front line.
Or being incompetent.
Yeah.
But if it's Greenskins, these are good, because Greenskins monsters will be in the front line. The only thing that's not good against is Stone Trolls, because they just don't give a fuck.
Stone Trolls, because you can reduce the armour enough.
You can reduce the armour of one of them, but most people have been free.
Yeah.
But Stone Trolls just don't give a fuck. Like, you could take away all of armour to read, and they'll still kick the shit out of half your army. Greenskins!
Greenskins, be like that.
Not balanced.
Next, Cavalry and Chariots, the least talked about section of Norsca.
Best units? They're fucking wolves on a chariot.
Yeah, there's also horses on one, a basic one.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, Marauder Chariots, they're chariots. I don't think there's an awful lot to talk about here.
They do throw axes, though.
The Ice Wolf Chariots do.
Although,
they do absolutely fucking nothing.
Let's be honest, if you're in a situation where you need a chariot, you've either not bought something or you've done something wrong somewhere else.
Yeah, there's this thing called Mammoth that we'll get onto that just do way better than chariots.
These are the weakest unit in the roster by a big margin.
Yeah,
everything else you can sort of make a justification.
Maybe basic Norse controls you wouldn't, but
even then, like, you can sort of justify, like, oh well, wait, basic. Oh, they just have trolls?
They have ice trolls and normal trolls available, but nobody brings the normal version.
No. But yeah, these guys are Norse controls. They're the 3 units if you see you're playing against somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
Or Willow.
There's also Frostworms.
Frostworms can be decent. Double Mammoth, Frostworm.
Yeah, and the Ice Wolf variant is just not much of an upgrade at all, especially for the cost. It isn't much of a difference.
I thought you meant normal Ice Wolves. I was going to be like, no, let's stop.
No.
Come back to
next, onto the Missile Cavalry, which is quite necessary. Although the javelins work pretty well as a ranged unit. We talked about these are the same as Chaos have available to them.
I don't even think they have rage, do they? I think they are literally the same.
They do have rage. They have the extra 25. Yeah, they do have rage.
Oh, so are they more expensive though?
Yeah, the 25 gold extra.
On each?
Oh, actually no. More Horsemasters are the same.
They're exactly the same. Have they no rage?
No, more Horsemasters have rage, but the same cost.
It's a bit weird.
That means Horsemasters for Norsca are just way better than regular.
Although rage only kicks in if you're in combat, you should not realistically.
Although Marauder Horsemasters have pretty decent melee combat, so when they run out of ammo, this means they serve pretty well as cavalry.
Mean, there's a good, to a degree. This is very, very strong words of good. To a degree, it could be good rushing down Chaos Horsemasters, because you can just chase them and throw as they're throwing at you. But if you do catch them, you get that bonus.
Yeah. There's also the fact that these guys will win against hounds. Most hound units will lose against these guys, especially with that range.
To mention the most important thing about Norsca, every unit will shout out Norsca when you select
Norsca,
and that is pretty much.
Even when you press the start battle button, you'll hear Norsca
into your feet. It's like, yeah, I know what I picked.
Did you pick Norsca or Chaos?
Norsca. I know what I picked. Thank you. Yeah, you're still Norscan. I'm not denying
this. Just triple check that you know what it is. Finally, onto the big section, monsters and beasts.
Alright, let's get on it.
Let's get on to this one. It's on unit caps because campaign exclusives don't exist. Norscan Warhounds, cheap hounds, good missile resistance, vanguard deployment, strider. These are hounds. They're what you expect from hounds.
In every shape,
poor leadership, really quick. They're like the Wolf Riders for goblins. Yeah.
Yeah, the better version though.
Yeah.
The vastly superior version. Basically, These guys are PS and the next ones are Xbox.
Yeah.
Although in recent years, that's 360 back.
Norsca Ice Wolves are just a dramatic stat increase compared to basic Warhounds.
So
and they cause
Warhounds
fear.
steroids.
But they don't have the
Missile
Vanguard
resist.
deployment. And they have missile resistance.
But they also have less units in the models.
Yeah.
But
And they're
everything
large.
else is better. Except the melee attack, because they have frost.
Yeah, they have frost, so that means they basically have a strong poison. They have like old poison, but better, where they actually slow down stuff by quite a chunk when they hit it, which makes them really good at chasing down skirmish cav. Because if they touch it, yeah, it's not running away. It ain't getting away. Its speed's gonna get cut by 35%.
Pretty nasty.
And its weapon strength is really good. 42 weapon strength for a hound unit is really, really nasty. Plus
What's the
that charge
melee
bonus as well. It's only 26, but they have a 38 charge bonus.
Yeah,
so on that initial hit,
That's the one thing you'll
quite
notice
nasty.
with another unit in Norsca is they have really high melee damage, but really low melee attack.
yeah, usually
not
it's
sure if I
most of
like
it's in
that
charge
more.
bonus, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like that more or less than having higher melee attack, but
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
what it is.
The ROR, Beasts of Tashna, Norscan Warhounds, are just a great upgrade for the Norscan Warhounds. Probably the
They
best
used to
hound
be-
unit in the game, I'd
They
say.
used to be a lot better.
Yeah, they recently had a price increase, but even then, I think they're still really good. They have Frenzy.
Oh, the attack nerf.
Oh, they did, but it's the same. So the Frenzy, it's the same because their Frenzy balances out. It's because Frenzy got a buff, they got a decrease.
Okay, yeah.
like with
no,
all
I
the
see
rest.
what you mean.
So yeah, they have Frenzy, and they also have a bonus versus large of 14, which means their melee attack gets up to 58 versus large creatures.
Which means they're very good anti-skirmish.
As you can tell, this means they absolutely demolish any skirmish cavalry.
Even some like cavalry.
Even some actual like monsters and cavalry, yeah, they'll do pretty well against. As long as it's not too armored, they'll do pretty damn well against it.
They're basically, you know, dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
body
if
slam it.
you're going for a strong like mobile core, definitely bring these guys. They're basically skin wolves to a degree, but faster,
Which we will get to in a moment.
which we'll get into a bit. Yeah. Next though, we have the Manticore. There ain't much to talk about here. It's a Manticore,
It's
really
a
nice terror bomb. Really want these against factions that are weak to terror and that aren't too heavily armored, like Skaven, Greenskins,
I
etc.
would say
etc.
Greenskins, but let's be honest, everyone's been in Blackhawk, big bosses.
Yeah, but they might not. Who knows?
But Batonia, not many people think it. It's good against Batonia. Their archers are the
Peasants
most
will run, yeah,
effective
yeah.
in the game.
Yeah, could be.
Well, I argue second most. But you throw it into that peasant unit's fucking off the field.
Yeah, I mean,
They want to go back to farming their potatoes. They are not
they're
fighting.
not. No, they're fighting
a
Manticore.
fucking Manticore.
Yeah, we've been
See what the
through
lady
why
tells me.
Manticores are just good for their terror bomb effect and their damage. Next on to something that isn't so good, trolls. Oh, it is ice trolls. Regular trolls.
Well, even 2 in 1.
Am I
probably
right
say-
in thinking that all the trolls are the same? Basic trolls, greenskin ones, so the chaos ones are the same.
I think they are the basic.
Let me look at greenskin
only-
ones.
Only thing with Norsca is they used to have a troll bomb, which was frog and 2 units of
Yeah,
3
that's
units
it.
of trolls, which used to be really good. And then CA looked at them, gone, oh, these guys seem to be doing good. Let's
Destroy them.
just give stone trolls to Greenskins.
Yeah.
Or whatever they did. And obviously, you know, there's a lot of ways to counter it.
Yeah, trolls are just not good. I mean,
they're just
whereas greenskins have their immunity psychology and their leadership buffs, Norsca has nothing like that, and so trolls are just not good.
Well, even that, like one flaming sword and that unit's regen
Yeah.
out the window.
Yeah, it's just not good. Norscan ice trolls are very much the same story. They're quite similar to stone trolls, which you think, oh, they're stone trolls, they must be good. They don't have the missile resistance, they're weak to fire, and again, you don't have those leadership buffs, and you don't have those immunity psychology buffs, so they don't stay in the fight. And when they run, they can get chased off quite easily.
The only thing they have over them is they have the slowdown with their...
Yeah, they have their slowing with their
Speed.
frostbite.
But your trolls, if you're catching something, that's because that person wants it in combat with you, not because
Yeah.
you're running it off.
Yeah.
You're so rarely going to be like, oh, wow, that speed boost on my trolls really helped. It's gonna be
Really
more
helps
like,
out. Yeah,
It's going to be more along the lines of, yeah, I should bought from Mia.
yeah,
Which are
absolutely.
what, like 100 gold more? 200?
About quite a bit, like 500 more.
Fucking hell. Should have
Yeah.
bought skin wolf.
Should have gone to Specsavers.
Yeah, speaking of skin wolves, I think that's our next unit.
Yep, next
I
unit.
remember off the right.
Also known as wind wolves, because they're probably one of the best units in the Norscan
They-
roster.
I think Outer and Coogan describe them both as the same. It's not even together, which is they are your win conditioners, Norsca.
They are called wind wolves for a reason.
Yeah, if you're playing Norsca and you're not bringing skin wolves, you've pretty much given up 50% of your winning power straight
Yeah,
away.
you bring
if not
these.
more.
There's only 3 factions where you don't bring these, and I think that's usually
Dwarfs.
dwarves. Sometimes I'd say chaos as well, and then half and half Bretonia. Every other faction you should be bringing these.
Yeah, but these are disgusting.
Yeah, Their regeneration, they have 20% physical resistance, they have nice melee strength, they have really good melee attack, they have frenzy on top of that, they have strider, they have really good health pool for a monstrous infantry of their size.
And they're pretty fast
and
as well.
they're 75 speed as well.
Yeah, there's not a lot that's going to escape.
For only 950 gold, really, really good.
I mean, their only downside, and it's not even a huge downside, it's just they only have 18 models, but I think trolls have about 12.
Yeah, 12.
It's no difference, but the ones you always want to... It's very dependent. You can either be armoured or unarmoured.
Yeah, there's a regular version, then there's an armoured version with an extra 55 armour for 10 less speed. Yeah.
So it's very rare you're going to bring normal skin walls, but against factions like Greenskins or in
Empire
faction name here. But even against Empire, some armor can be good just for archer fire.
Yeah, you might bring the armored one, especially with Empire Knights and that. You might bring the armored versions.
The more I'm saying this, the more I'm convincing myself that you just don't bring regular, you always bring armored.
It's half and half, I think, because there is an extra 150 gold.
But even if somebody, let's say hypothetically now against Bretonia, skirmish cav can rip apart normal armor.
Yeah, I don't think you really bring. I think you prefer to bring Famir against Bretonia most of the time.
But you bring Famir against everything. They're fucking nasty.
Well, yeah. I usually bring one or the other. You usually bring both that much.
But RR version.
Yeah, you might bring the RR version, but you don't bring like great weapons along with skin walls.
I mean with skin walls.
Oh, RR skin walls, yeah. Look at those Moors of Savagery. You might notice that one of the weaknesses that skin walls have is they're not armor piercing. There you go, that's problem fixed.
That's one of the weaknesses. The other one is fire.
Yeah, that as well, but who cares about that? It's actually magic and fire. Flaming Sword of Ruin hits them quite hard because they lose their physical resistance and they also gain regeneration.
Blades of Archaon or Blazing Knights.
Yeah, can be quite a hit. But yeah, Moors of Savagery have armor piercing as well as a Vanguard deployment as well. Which, I mean, when you give armor piercing as well to these units, it just makes them really, really good.
One good thing about that as well is you can combine that with a Skin Wolf Lord dude, and you get a Skin Wolf Lord and them Vanguard in, and they get a missile resist, and
extra armor.
They're not the strongest, don't get me wrong. Like, if you bring 1 and 1, they're not great, but if you bring 2 of them, and that's pretty nasty. Yeah,
it's a pretty good combination. The Werekin along with some of his own Skin Wolves. Yeah, Skin Wolves, Wind Wolves.
Yeah.
Next, Famir. Famir Warriors, Famir Great Weapons, and the Miststalkers. Basic Famir Warriors you don't see that often, I think.
No,
they're sort of outshined by the RRR and the Great Weapon variant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing they're good with is just cheap.
Cheaper, yeah, 150 cheaper.
And they have a bit more melee attack.
No, they have actually. Yeah, they have more melee attack and a bit more melee defense. Yeah.
They're a unit.
Yeah, they're okay, but it's like they fill very much the same vein as trolls. Is the fact that they're a weird support mixed infantry. But just talking about Famir briefly, the whole special thing about Famir is they have magical attacks, armor sundering, they have a 20% missile resistance so long as their leadership's above 50%, and they are armor piercing. So they're a pretty decent monstrous infantry. And they also have really armoured as well. 110 armour is really good.
They're okay. They're there.
Yeah, if we look at the Famir Great Weapon variant, these guys are
Before we go any further, I know a lot of you sitting there thinking, why are they saying okay? They sound great. Yeah, there's another unit called the Miststalkers, which just puts them to shame in every way.
Yeah, it really does.
And I think, how much is it, Willow? More like 200 more?
300
more?
300
more? Yeah, there's a good reason why. Don't get me wrong, any other faction, that'd be a really solid unit. They might even be the best unit. But in Norsca...
Yeah, there's other variants, yeah, that you can bring. I mean, Great Weapons already fulfill the anti-infantry. It's not like, compared to other Great Weapon units where you might lose like 10 melee attack and like 21 melee defense or something, these guys only lose 6 and 4. And in exchange, you're getting 27 bonus versus large, which is a lot of bonus versus large. That doubles their melee attack against large units, which makes them the key thing for killing like knights and lords and just anything that's armoured and large. Will basically lose to them. Especially when you mix in that armor sundering, which means that all their infantry will do more damage to it. It's very powerful. Famir Great Weapons are one of the best anti-large monstrous, just anything in the game.
Yeah, but just nasty.
Really nasty, yeah.
No way of putting it. They are very impolite.
Speaking of which, the Miststalkers, these guys, if we compare them to basic Famir Warriors, you're getting extra 9 melee attack, 10 melee defense, because I mean, Famir Warriors already have a bit of a problem with their stats for being monstrous infantry. These guys help that a lot more, and these guys also have Terror, as well as Vanguard deployment and Stalk. Because of course the warriors with monstrous infantry, they're going to get shot by armor-piercing missiles, cannon fire, handguns, that sort of thing. These guys have Stalk and Vanguard deployment, So you could deploy them wherever you want, and nobody will be able to see them until it's too late.
Yeah, they're very good. Well, as we've just covered them now, there's a very good combo here, which is 2 of the great weapons with 2 berserkers.
Yeah.
You get low damage from the great weapons, but good AP, armor, sundering, and anti-large, and you get really good melee attack and bonus for his infantry from the berserkers, but low AP and armor.
And the familiar warriors can eat some of the hits because they have 110 armor. Yeah,
so you basically rush. If say it's an anti bonus versus large, you rush in the berserkers first. Bonus versus infantry, you rush in the familiar first. Even against Cav, they're very good.
Yeah, like something like this is a very often seen sort of Norsca front line, with some marauders on the flanks, berserkers in the middle, and with the familiar in the middle as well support. Very strong
nice
combination. Giant.
It's a giant.
It's a giant. Next.
They're big.
Yeah, we went over the Greenskin giant, so it's the same story. They just look cooler.
The same, except it's called Norsca.
Cooler, get it? Because cold.
I can kick him if anybody wants.
Oh, you can. Next, Feral Mammoth. These guys are your... Yeah, well, let's just talk about the basic War Mammoth first as a baseline, because it's what everyone brings.
Well, do you want to... I was going to say, do you want to do the Wyvern first and then just cover...
Oh, yeah, just finish it on the Mammoth, yeah. Okay, yeah. So Wyvern's not good.
They fly.
They die.
And, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not the worst flying unit in the game. They're the second worst flying unit in the game.
What's first?
Shut up, Willow. Orc War Boss.
Yeah, maybe.
But they're not great. Like,
no.
You just sort of keep them as a support unit. If you put like a mammoth in combat, maybe you can cycle charge in the back with these guys. But if you're doing that, these guys are against cycle back. They're not good.
A good thing to just look at there is just the fact that Manticores are only like a bit of a decrease for like less than half the cost.
Yeah.
So if your choice is between 2 Feral Manticores and a Frost Wyvern,
bye Wyvern.
It's easy. Yeah, it's easy.
Unless
the breath isn't that strong. Their effect that they reduce speed all around them isn't that good when they're already a flying unit that's pretty fast. The magic damage isn't really needed when you have a Firecaster, and they're weak to fire, without regeneration. If they had regeneration, okay, fair enough, but they don't. And they already have a pretty small health pool for a dragon. Not great. Yeah, okay. Onto the actual good unit, that is the Mammoth. We'll use the War Mammoth as a baseline. It's a tank. It is a monster that runs through things and it doesn't stop. You do not want this thing to stay in combat, you want it to keep running through things. It doesn't stop. It's got 68 charge bonus, you better make full use of it. This goes with Wolfric on his Mammoth as well. The key to this is you see the enemy front line, you run through it, you get into the missiles, you kill all the missiles, then you turn around and finish off the front line.
Not even that, you can... Wait, is this feral or not?
I'm just talking about War Mammoth first, the basic thing.
Okay. Well, yeah, you just... Yeah, it's just a good distraction card effects as well. And if you put this on the battlefield and a shit ton of Familiar, they're going to shoot this. Not because this is stronger than the Familiar, because, ooh, big scary, better shoot with cannon. Yeah,
and this thing has insane damage output versus infantry. It has 34 bonus versus infantry. That means it has 68 melee attack, plus its charge bonus. It will trample any and all infantry. More than, like... Arguably more than just, like... It's way better than... It's probably... I wonder if this or Skin Wolves is the best unit in a Norscan roster sometimes. When it comes to killing large, the Skin Wolves are generally the best. When it comes to killing everything else, it's the War Mammoth.
I mean, when it comes to killing all your enemies' cavalry or skirmish, yeah. Although War Mammoths are good, certain factions will rip them apart in a heartbeat.
Yeah, because of the missiles or certain large anti-large. Like, War Mammoths don't have enough melee attack to kill cavalry usually, so they can struggle against that. But when it comes to any infantry unit, against dwarves, against just any infantry unit will die to a mammoth.
If you were talking about feral mammoths, I think they're better.
Because
they're 500 cheaper. They have rampage, but they do come back and they might run into your enemy's front line. So
yeah, the downside is there that the rampage can make them sitting ducks for missile fire, because the whole thing with the mammoth, in my opinion, is where you can just run through and just get into those missiles, destroy them, and then destroy everything else.
It's true, but like at the end of the day, they can make a feral mammoth rampage. Then they can make a normal mammoth route before it gets to the front line.
Yeah, I mean, it does have more leadership, more armor, more health than the feral mammoth has 800 less health.
But what I'm saying is, like, say you got a feral mammoth now, you just started the game, it's just spawned, like, move, right, it's rampaging. You have a normal mammoth, at the stage where it'd be rampaging, it'd be wavering. By the time the feral gets to the front line, it's dead. By the time this gets to the front line, it's routing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for 500 more against certain factions, I just throw feral in, like dwarves.
Yeah,
it's gonna die.
Yeah, it's gonna die. Just may as well run it through and watch it do all the damage in the world.
Yeah, have some shits and giggles as it runs through a bunch of half-heighted men, throwing them in the air.
Yeah, just throwing them all over the place.
Which, while we're here, I hate that in this game that the dwarves do not go flying when they get hit by a mammoth. Those guys should be on the other side
Gravity.
of the map. Like even full Ironbreaker should be lying on the floor in a puddle out the map's boundary.
Because of a mammoth, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a mammoth.
The other version of the War Mammoth that is the same cost is the War Shrine, which it loses its missile strength poke, but it gains Encourage, a benefit, a AoE buff that it can give of +10 leadership, and an ability where it can give a unit fire damage and +24 melee attack and +16 leadership.
Yeah, and let's be honest here, missile damage is never the thing you want.
Yeah, it's not usually that helpful, so you can usually go for the War Shrine whenever you're bringing a Mammoth.
And especially against factions like Greenskins. Not entirely terrible because of that fire damage.
This is also really good against vampire counts as well because fire damage, leadership, and Encourage as well.
Now you might be sitting there thinking, "Oh, why don't we use this against Wood Elves? It has fire damage."
It's because
fucking
it
Wood
gets
Elves.
shot.
They don't care. They will shoot you.
You think fire damage versus Wood Elves good, but you don't usually actually see the units that are weak to fire that much.
No, I mean maybe a Forest Dragon with the twins, and that's about it.
That's not even weak to fire damage. That's just weak to magic damage.
Is it not? No, I'm pretty sure Forest Dragons are weak to fire as well. Check it.
I'm checking it. I'll do it on this side so I don't lose it. Forest Dragon. Yeah, no, it just has its physical resistance.
Really? Oh,
no witness to fire.
Yeah, okay. So this is how 90% of me and Willow's discussions go, where I say prove it, and he's either right or wrong.
There you go.
There's never a middle ground.
Yeah, so it's not that good against Will Elves. Don't think it is. And the final version is the ROR Soul Crusher War Mammoth, which its special ability is, of course, it has all the increased stats, it has Strider, and it has Enrage, which for 22 seconds reduces its damage it takes by 40%.
Okay, we should, if I don't, I will never hear the end of it. I'm going to give Psycho credit for this here, and I'm going to let Willow explain it why. There's a brilliant technique with this that Psycho loves, and let Willow explain it, but if I don't give him credit, I won't hear the end of it. I will be killed in my sleep.
So, of course,
he is a Psycho.
You go through the strategy, because I can't remember it.
Okay. Wait, really, Willow?
It's got something to do with just popping it when it gets shot.
Okay, what you do is you run it forwards against the dwarfs, lizardmen, whatever faction shoots you. Lizardmen, even with these sort of engines. And when it's getting shot, when it gets...
Yeah, you pop it,
health,
that's self-explanatory, yeah.
Say it takes 1,000 damage. You then pop it because your enemy will probably focus the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Or if they send anti-large it, say it's against Greenskins and they send... I don't know. There's no anti-large. Say it's against lizardmen and they send... Star Chamber Guardians, all of its Carnosaurs, you pop it and they're just going to be there for 30-40 minutes.
Yeah, because you're cutting the damage nearly in half that it's taking.
Yes, it's a good chunk. And if they manage to kill it while you're charging in, it's fucked from the get-go.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could have done to save it.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the Mammoth. That is Norsca.
That's Norsca.
And that is Greenskins.
Your 3 wins and loses for Norsca. Best 3.
Oh yeah, my best 3 units. Well, of course, I'd say Skin Wolf.
Not including Laws and Heroes, because we both know Wolfric would just
yeah, everyone. I'd say Skin Wolves, the War Mammoth, with the Shrine, and Berserkers.
I'd agree. Besides one, I'd say Skin Wolves, Berserkers, and Ice Hounds.
Ice Hounds, yeah.
I'm not going to say the Cavalry, the Skirmish Cav, because...
Yes, that's pretty obvious. I mean, you always bring it. You do. Well, you don't always. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you always bring it. But this, even in a skirmish fight, the Skin Wolves, Ice Wolves, whatever they're called, they will help you in that fight because they can catch that cav and slow it down. And nom 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 nom.
Alright then, well, that is it for today's session. That's all the sessions now covered because we had to do this one again because we didn't record the old one.
Yeah, but don't worry, I'm sure I'll think of some other stupid shit to make Willow do next week.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It might even be about why melee attack is more superior than damage, or why
who knows?
Less superior colours are green because all orcs are green, therefore it's a better colour.
We can only wait and see.
Yeah, until my stupid mind comes up with something.
Alright then, well, thank you all for watching and goodbye.
Yep, bye.